What's up, everybody? It's the movie guru, and I hope you guys are excited as I am. The season finale is here, and it's time to do our live stream. I want to thank everybody who really liked the live stream we did last time, and the demand to have my guests back has been very overwhelming. And I want to take a second to thank everybody for just helping me build my page, for all the new likes, all the new subscribers. It's been a great journey. From is a great show, great cast, great actors, and a great mystery. That's something that we don't see a lot on TV. And from day one, I've been a big supporter of the show when it was on Epic, and I really just started doing these reviews just for the love of the show, the like of the characters, and it has really turned into a big thing. So we definitely have a big community now, a big Fromly hashtag Fromly, and that's definitely showing now. And this is definitely beyond great. And so I want to bring my guest in. So like I said, we did a live about a month ago, and what was going on was I was doing a lot of deep dives and theories. And so my theory video was about the Vikings. And so that's really the timeline that I started and was really posting a lot on Reddit. And I ended up doing my video. And in my video, my guest Taran was really vocal in the comments, like, "Wow, like your theory. Check mine out." And reading his full theory, which we're gonna go over again, I saw a lot of things that made sense. And so I reached out to him, and that's how we did the live. And so I did put the link to the live in the bio. So you guys, if you haven't seen that, you can check that out. But look, without further ado, I want to bring in my guest. And there he is. Taran, what's going on, man?
Hey, the movie guru. Thanks so much for having me back on your show. I really appreciate you giving me a chance to hang out again with you. We had so much fun last time, and it was really really a lot of fun. Like, the way you reacted to the theory was really like, you were very open to it, and we had a really good rhythm going. I had so much fun, and the comments that the video got were super nice as well.
Oh,
Really
you're right.
appreciate
You're right.
everyone.
A lot of people were saying that the mid season of season two got kind of dull, right? Because it is a drama show. As much as we love the mystery and the supernatural part, it is a drama. And when we did our live, was I guess a point where a lot of fans were tuning in to other series, right? That midpoint low, and talking about the theories, doing the videos, and your tarot theory, which I think I can proudly say is the number one theory now on the internet, right? Really
Maybe.
brought the beat back.
Yeah, I mean, no, the response has been amazing, and the Fromily is they're really nice people. The people that watch this show, I get the impression that they're really a really fun group to be around, and yeah, I'm just excited to talk about From, because, like I said in the last video, I don't know anyone personally that watches From, except for my brother, and he watches it very casually. He doesn't try and solve it. He's just like, oh, this is interesting. I'll just let the craziness come at me, and I'm not going to try and figure out what's going on until they tell me, which I think is the attitude of a lot of viewers as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of casual watchers, and there's nothing wrong with that if you're a
Yeah,
casual watcher. There's a lot of good shows, and I mean, if you've been reading the press on the show, right, they've kind of been saying that this is a sleeper hit, right,
yeah,
and that it was totally unexpected. A lot of people missed season one. And really picked up, I guess, really at the season finale of season two, but better late than never. I think it's great that everybody's now tuning in and that the show is getting what it deserves, right? I mean, good
yeah,
writing, good content, good acting, just a
yeah,
good plot and theme is not predictable at all. And I think a lot of shows on TV were getting very predictable. Everything was
yeah.
a love triangle, everything was this reality drama, but they really did something different with this show, and a lot of fans were picking up from it. So
Absolutely.
let's do this. Let's dive back into the season. Let's watch the season trailer, right? And then what we'll do is then after that we'll watch the ending a little bit. Just pick up from spoiler alert for anybody. We'll pick up from the lighthouse, and then we'll sort of go into the discussion. And so, you want to make the claim on your on your theory, like this is extreme spoiler warnings for anybody who doesn't want to know this much.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's I'm not saying my theory is correct or completely correct, but I feel like I've probably got a few things right, just the based on the feedback I've gotten. So, there might be some people who are like, nobody knows what's going on. I just like listening to people's theories. I think that I've got a pretty good idea, sort of what's happening. So if you do, if I am right, spoiler warning. If I'm wrong, never
Yeah.
mind.
And just in response to the comments that we've been getting, a lot of people, some people do take this seriously, and I think some of the fun of the show is coming up with the theories, right? Is like watch the show, interpret the information, and let the show take you, where you go, right? Like if you see something that you think, like go ahead and go down that rabbit hole and just enjoy it, right? Because there hasn't been a show like this for a while that does that. And that's what happened with me with the Vikings, right? I mean, maybe it was, all the Marvel movies or whatever, maybe it was whatever, but I was all into the Viking stuff and connecting it with Odin and Loki and his three kids and Fenrir the wolf and all this stuff. And I'm like, it matches, it matches. And just like how your theory with the tarot. And so what we'll do is we'll watch some of the trailer. I'll put it on now.
Things you need to know about where you are.
This brings back memories.
You believe in monsters. Everyone's scared. They should be.
You picked a bad spot.
You picked a bad spot.
Yeah, man. I'm so sad that Smiley's gone. I hope they find a way of bringing him back, because that actor is such a nice guy as well. I've seen a lot of interviews with him, and he's the best monster. I mean, the nurse,
he's
the creepy
standout,
nurse,
definitely.
the creepy nurse is pretty good. I find her kind of creepy as well. She's got like a very sort of weird, sort of docile smile. But Smiley, he's the OG monster. I hope we bring him back. I feel like he was the worst monster they could have picked to kill off. But maybe we'll see him again. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we will.
Real quick, I do have a theory about that. I do think they can bring him back, because we still don't know if what we're seeing, right, as far as these creatures, because they call them creatures sometimes, but then they call them nightmare creatures, right?
Yeah, or
And
monsters. Yeah.
or monsters, and we don't know if they are just a shell or some sort of something that's made, right? Because we know there has been other visions, right? And so who's
Yeah,
to say
yeah.
that whatever is controlling the creatures can't make it change of form, because we're guessing these are not these people's real forms. I mean, just from the time age, right? And the one that always stands out to me was the milkman, right? The milkman is the one that stands out to me.
Yeah.
And whatever time period it is, we know that he couldn't have been alive up until that point, still delivering milk. So it has to be some
Yeah.
sort of conjuring. So I'm sure they can make whatever when it really comes down to it.
I'm still not 100% sure what the monsters are relative to my theory. They may be game pieces. I don't know. They may be reverse tarot cards. I don't know, because we haven't actually seen someone turn into one properly yet. So I have no idea. But I got some rough theories.
Okay.
Some very rough ones.
So let's let's get into the finale. So I'm gonna go to my own video, shameless plug here. Check out the Movie Guru, and check out my episode 10 finale discussion. I won't play the audio, but it's up there. It's been getting a lot of love and likes, so I appreciate that. And so we're picking up right from this, right? The symbol, right? I mean, this was a big reveal, and I'm glad they did reveal it, right? Because I feel like that's the only solidified answer we got about what was the symbol. And
Well,
it's
I got
like,
a question for you though.
okay.
Do you think those are roots or trees?
And see, I was kind of looking at vines, right? I kind of was defining them as vines, but vines / root, because the reason why I said vines is because it looks like when you get over to the middle where they kind of intersect, it looks like they kind of all cross over. Like you see like the smaller ones that kind of look like they connect to tree. It looks
I
like
feel like there's definitely vines growing up it, if at
yeah,
least. At the
it
very
looks
least,
like it's
there's some
growing.
vine.
It's growing on a tree, like growing over a tree.
Yeah.
And I figured if it was vines, it would be able to stretch further than just a root, meaning like a root being in the ground. And so my theory was that it's connected to something underground, right? And then it came out this hole. It covered those trees. Those trees led to the roots of the bottle tree. And then the bottle tree being connected to the lighthouse, being controlled by the boy in white. So that was my my connection.
Well, let me send you something over Twitter. Anyway, you keep talking, man. I got to show you something because I think people would be interested in it. It's
Okay.
a behind the scenes photo where they put all of Victor's drawings
Oh, that's
on
good.
one
That's good.
thing.
That's good.
I'm sure Twitter will compress it. Where I've sent. Actually, I'm going to send it to you via email. Actually, I
Okay.
think that'll have a better
Yeah, I can
better
bring it up.
quality.
And
Better
so,
quality.
and so that was my theory, that it's connected to something underground, giving it a power or a source, right? And then there's those trees that kind of intersect over the, I guess it was the hole or whatever, and then those vines are connecting with other trees in the forest.
Yeah.
Most importantly, the bottle tree, and then from the bottle tree is going to the lighthouse, and then from the lighthouse to the boy in white. And so I guess now my ultimate theory is that the boy in white is behind a lot of this. I won't say everything, because the way the episode was broken down, it seemed like everyone had their own mission, right? It seemed like there was 3 or more missions, right? So
Yeah.
you got Jade on his own mission, Tabitha on his own mission, Boyd on his own mission, or own part of the game. And I 100% believe that they separated like that for a reason. And so here I wanted to play some of this. So we see Tabitha, she makes it through the bottle tree, she makes it to the lighthouse.
Yeah.
And she makes it inside. And once again, I thought this was a big scene right here, because we saw this in the earlier flashback where it was somewhat the same. It seemed to be a little bit more objects on the steps for the flashback.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, but we get in reality what was really there. And I guess there's 2 ways to interpret this, right? This goes into what Jim was saying before, where it's showing you what it wants you to see, right? And so when she had that vision of being in the lighthouse, it showed her these things. She saw them, and then it was because they were true. But then this is where it kind of ties into your theory with the cards, right? And you were saying about what were you saying about the cars here on the steps in the cards?
Yeah. So here's what I think this means. So first of all, the cards are a 4, and then the cards that you can see on the left is a 4, and then on the right it's a 7 and an 8, right? So, and then you've got these 2 vehicles next to it. Now, I have always said that what happens is your car arrives in Fromland, and then people get turned into cards. Basically, they become like a representation of a card that's being played. It's like there's a big game being played above. It's almost like a metaphor. They're all a metaphor for what's going on. So they're moving cards around up there. They're moving game pieces around up there, and they're sort of looking down on this game board. And so what's also really interesting about these numbers, obviously we've seen 4 and 7 come up a lot, but when you
have. Oh, so they're 4 and 7 on there?
Yeah, so there's a 4 on the left and then 7 and 8 on the right. Okay. But so why are the 4 and 7 not together? Well, let me tell you, because in my opinion, there are 4 players. So it's saying there's 4, and then there's 78 cards, because in a game of tarot, how many cards are there? 78.
And I remember from the last live, you did say that. And
now it's here.
And now that's there. Wow. See, it's like uncanny connections like that, right? That really, really lets you know, like, wow, this is really deep. And that's what you call a deep dive, folks. It's a real deep dive. This is a real deep dive. I want to take a second, pause right there, and go to the chat. We got some love going on. They say, hi, Taran, good to see you. Some Taran theories are so wild and crazy, but I appreciate that we have someone reaching so far. Let's see. If somebody said if they don't renew, they're gonna find we all unsubscribe, right? No, that's definitely a fact. Just a lot of hellos, and we appreciate the love. We appreciate everybody checking in and watching our live. Okay, so let's keep going. So we didn't see the numbers this time, the dates, right?
No.
And we didn't see Jim hanging from the top. And did you think that was Jim? I don't think we talked about it, but did you think that was Jim that was hanging from the top before?
Yeah, absolutely. It was a metaphor for the Hanged Man, which is his tarot card. And also you'll notice that in the RV, when they flip over, he's also hanging upside down.
No, that's right.
And the only tarot card that hangs upside down is the hangman, who hangs by his foot by a rope. And then Jim's surrounded by rope all the time through this series as well. And he also has a halo around his head. And you'll see that Jim often has the sun coming from behind his head. So, for example, when he wakes up Jade, when Jade's having his like Civil War soldier dream, and then and then Jim shakes him awake, the sun is behind his head like a halo. And then even when Donna and Jim are talking in the kitchen in Colony House, and they're talking about this voice, and she's saying, "Don't tell anyone," you'll see that the dream catcher is perfectly shot around his head like a halo. So I believe that it was just the show telling us Jim is the hangman tarot card.
And see, when I started seeing the images of different people hanging upside down, that's where it really got into my Viking theory, right? Because looking into the other dates, and also trying to figure out who, when some people arrived in that part of the America before Christopher Columbus, and we know the Vikings had, did that. And then getting into more of the Viking culture, because I was following the runes, I was following the language and the symbols on the runes, and that is Elder. I always say it wrong, but it's Elder Fufnark, which is a language from the Vikings. And then from there, I was trying to interpret the symbols, and I actually was working with somebody on Reddit, and they were checking out. They basically translated what the letters on the talisman meant, and I'm sure everybody knows now. But that F symbol is a symbol for the ash tree, and the ash tree also could be a letter A, and it also could be represent Odin, right? So that was my rabbit hole. So I'm like, all right, so the name Odin came up, and then looking more into the stories of, I guess it was Ragnarok, but it was the down tree, it was Odin, and then Odin hung himself upside down to get and it said in the text, in the prose Edda, it said Odin hung himself upside down to get the knowledge of the talismans, right? To give to the people for protection. And the sign that's on the rune is the universal sign for protection in that Viking language. And so so that was the deep dive that I did that really connected mine from Jim hanging upside down. All right. So let's keep going. So Tabitha made her way up this winding stairwell, and I think there was a big clue here where she goes past the gears, right? Like when she went past the gears, I really wanted her to just shut them off. Like, like you know what? Let's just be short here, right? And let's just shut the gears off, right? Like let's not take any chances, and let's just throw a wrench in there, right? Just to be sure, to make sure that it wasn't, something else, because
It's a shame she doesn't have a phone. She could like call up Jim and be like, "Hey, all right, I'm gonna jam up this winch thing. You let me know if she wakes up, and then see if that stops it."
Right?
They haven't got anything.
And no, that's also a good point too, right? Because remember, Jim builds amusement rides, right?
Yeah.
And this is the only mechanical thing we've seen so far on, I guess, Fromville, right? Nothing else is mechanical. Everything else magically works, right? Nothing is like a system or mechanical. And so, I mean, a lot of light has been, to me anyway, a lot of light has been shined towards Jim being not who he says he is, right? So he's always been on my suspect.
He's in your sus radar. Okay.
Yeah, he is. Okay, so then we get to she gets past the gears, and then bam. Now, this is the main part I wanted to talk to you about, right? I mean, what were you expecting, right, in this last episode?
Well, look, by this point, I had realized what part of the game the tower is, which I'll get into a bit later. But basically, in the game of Pachisi, which is an Indian game, and I'll tell you how I ended up in Newfoundland with these explorers. In this game, there is a home tower in the middle, and basically the aim of the game is to get your pieces to the tower in the middle, and then they go home, and that's how you win the game, right? So I was already kind of suspecting that it might send her home, which is kind of interesting. And I think what's happening here is I believe that the boy in white is trying to stop the witch from scoring a point by getting one of her pieces to the tower. So he pushes her out the window to try and stop her from scoring, but she already teleports back home as she's falling out of the window, and so he doesn't succeed in stopping her from scoring a point. But what was interesting the most about this scene for me is I had thought the boy in white was evil up until this point. I would thought he was playing with trickery, and that's why he's so nice to Sarah. Now I'm thinking the boy in white is sort of a reluctant ally of the devil. So he is on the same team, and he sort of has to do what the devil says. I'm not sure what is being held over him to make him behave this way, but he didn't need to say to her, "I'm sorry, this is the only way," and then push her out the window. He could have just shoved her right out the window and not said that. So it tells me that he is no. I've had to change my theory. I don't think he's an evil twin anymore. I think he may be one of the explorers, either Cabot, one of the Corte Real brothers, who has learned the error of their ways, potentially, but they're still on the devil's team, and they still have to work with him for whatever reason. I'm not sure why, but the reason that he apologizes before he pushes her. So I think that actually he's more of a reluctant bad guy rather than. So I don't know if you watch The Walking Dead, but the guy with the burned face, I've forgotten his name now. He's like a bad guy, but he's sort of forced into it. So I feel like maybe the boy in white is a bit like that.
You're talking about one of Negan's men, right?
Yeah,
I remember. Yeah, I understand. Well, he's like, I think the boy in white is just a Sour Patch Kid, right? Sometimes he's sweet, sometimes he's sour, right? she caught him on that type of day, right? But I did not expect this at all, and I didn't even expect Tabitha to even go to the tower. I felt like that was a whole switch, and I talked about it on my channel, how they kind of did this role reversal, which is a clear sign of great writing, right? Because it was Tabitha looking for the kids, it was Jade looking for the symbol, and Boyd, being the hometown hero trying to free the town. And so what ended up happening was Jade found the kids, Tabitha got to the tower, and I thought Boyd was going to get to the tower, and then Boyd saving the town. But I thought he might save the town in the tower, like kind of like that. I didn't think he would go back to that dungeon and it be where everything was, but they put it together nicely. But I didn't see the boy in white popping up. I did at one point think there was a third group of people. And I actually wore my Scooby-Doo shirt today. I don't know if you guys can see it, but I thought, it was going to be, a whole Scooby-Doo thing, like, get to the tower and it's his grandfather, right? Or Tabitha's grandfather, because in the first episode, they were going to see the grandparents. And Jim has said, do you remember the last time we went? And to me, that just sounded like a connection to how his bracelet could have already got into this place, because they already had been there before. And I started to think it was a game. I'm like, maybe there's some type of cult ritual wrong turn type of thing going on, right? And I don't know if you've seen the most recent Wrong Turn. It's like Wrong Turn 20. I don't know if you know.
I haven't seen it. Sorry.
There's like 8 Wrong Turn movies, and in the last one, there was like a cult that lives in the woods, and this cult, kind of like kidnapped the people, and they play this. Well, they don't play a game with them, but they play a deadly game where they hunt and kill them. Is that kind of was what the vibes was giving me from season 1. And so I thought that they would find this third group, and they were the ones that were using some sort of sorcery to control the creatures, right? And some sort of sorcery to make people have visions, right? And also going into when I also was going into the Viking mythology, something about the Fae and the fairies came up, right? And this was big for a minute. There was probably like 2 weeks where all the theories I saw on Reddit or even myself were about Fae and fairies.
Yeah, I think I had the most liked fairy theory back then. Back before. Yeah, I had like it was like 3 different mythologies mixed together. I thought it was like the Slewer from Irish mythology mixed with Grandmother Spider from another mythology, mixed with Vikings. And I thought they were mixing all 3 mythologies together in like one place. But it didn't. I ended up seeing that I wasn't correct on that.
Yeah, they kind of, and I think their writing is doing that a lot, meaning like they're sprinkling a little this, right, and adding different branches.
I've seen like when I'm like, okay, my theory is correct. If I'm in my head, I'm like, my theory is correct. I see them like pushing, you to try and think other things. I can
Mhm.
see their sort of trickery that they're
Mhm.
doing. They definitely play a few games with the
Mhm.
viewers.
And so the reason why I thought it was the Fae and the Fairies was because of, there is a place, like a land, right? There's
Mm,
different realms, right? So
yeah,
the tree, going
yeah,
back to the symbols on the rune, which is the ash tree, which is the world tree, and when that tree falls, it's Ragnarok. But there's 9 realms, and one of those realms was the Fae realm, right? So we
right.
know that the people in Fromville crossed over from somewhere, right?
Yeah,
But then the thinking was that they weren't the only things that could cross over, right? And so there's other things crossing over. And so the creatures, right? I thought the creatures could be one. And I thought the boy also in the Viking mythology was what they call a myling. And
okay.
so that is the spirits of or spirits of kids that are ghosts, and they haunt people to bury their bones so they can rest peacefully. And that's at one point what the ghoulish kids looked like, right? Like they were kind
Sure.
of appearing
They
to
could-
Tabitha, and they're
mhm.
like, Ankui, and nobody knew what it meant, right? And so everybody's like, what is going on here? Is that, bury me or mother or whatever
Yeah,
it
could be.
is?
You don't know.
And
Yeah.
so
It might just be a made up word. It could
yeah.
be, they could have just made it with the mythology, right?
And then it connected with the fairies, because if you are in the forest and you see what they call a fairy ring or fey ring, you
Mhm.
get trapped there and you can't get out. And so I was looking into that a little bit. That was my rabbit hole. And it said when you get out, the only way to get out is not eat the food, right? That
Yeah.
they give
Yeah.
you. And so I'm like, oh, everybody was suspect about the food and how is Kenny's mom coming up with this food. And so I was like, if anybody escapes, it's going to be from not going to the diner,
Mm.
not eating the food, and then they ran out of food.
Well, let me tell you, if you want to read a book that is like where the answer is the fairies, and it's not even a mystery, they tell you straight up from the start. There's a really good book called The Call by, I think it's Peadar O'Loughlin. I've probably pronounced his name terribly, but it's a really good book. I highly recommend it. Audiobook's great as well. Oh, thank you, Spirit Falcon.
Yeah,
Speaking
giving
of which,
the
it's getting
chat
a
some
little
love.
late. It's getting a little late for me. Do you mind if we jump on the theory?
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
I know we said we watched the trailer a little bit, but we ended up talking around cool stuff in the end.
All right, let's get to the most important part,
Oh yeah, okay.
which is her going out the window. Sorry, and then so here it is, her going out the window, and then her waking up in the hospital, right? And
Yeah, I
that
mean,
was big,
she's got
right?
the cuts on her face, but she clearly didn't hit the ground
But see,
before
this
she
was my
fell.
thing. I wanted to. So look, in this part, I tried to freeze it. She did turn her face, because I'm like, how did she really get those cuts on her face?
Yeah,
Did she turn? And she did turn. She did
yeah,
turn. She did hit the glass with her face.
yeah.
So we see the cuts, so we know it's real. And then she wakes up in the hospital
Yeah.
bed. I knew a lot of people was gonna be upset about at this point.
But I think we're gonna see her in season 3. I think she's
Oh
gonna
yeah,
be meeting with the families of everyone in Fromland, trying to figure out what sent them there. I think we're gonna meet Elgin's grandma. I think we're gonna meet. I think she's gonna talk to her own mom as well, and there's gonna be something coming out of that. I actually think Eloise might be her mom. So we'll have to see about that.
and
But
so
I think she's gonna be doing all sorts of research.
when she opened the window here, I'm trying to stop it at that point. When she opened the window here, this is where I believe she was at. So here's where she opens the window.
Yeah.
We see mountains in the background. We see sunshine, and we see not an ocean, but looks like some sort of lake or some sort of a body of water.
Yeah.
And I did look up hospitals or St. Anthony's, and I didn't see it St. Anthony's, but this came up, St. John, Newfoundland.
Yeah, I think actually I saw someone had identified it correctly, and it's Camden, Maine.
Mhm.
And there's not actually a real hospital there. They use
That's
like a
what I figured.
hotel room.
That's
So
what I
it's
figured.
not actually St. John's, unfortunately. But what's interesting is St. Anthony's, St. Anthony, which is the hospital's name, St. Anthony, he is the patron saint of lost things. And there is a St. Anthony's hospital. Someone told me this on Discord. There's a St. Anthony's hospital in Newfoundland
Mhm.
near Boyd's Cove. So
Yeah.
that might be another little hint that the showrunners have left.
And I did see that they said Camden, Maine, but still, me on the Viking. I mean, I put this together where you see the Vikings left Scandinavia, they went to Iceland, and then they went to, it's kind of hard to see down here, but it says Newfoundland. And also connecting into what you were talking about with the how do you
Finland.
pronounce it? The Beothuk?
Yeah, the Beothuk.
Beothuk.
Someone
Beothuk.
told me on YouTube that it's Beothuk, so I'm going to
Beothuk.
try and pronounce it
Okay.
that way. I've only
And
read it before, so who knows?
and so that and I'm like, wow, it has to be that area, because this area was busy for, like we were saying, travelers before Christopher Columbus. And so I'm still riding with the Newfoundland.
Yeah, I mean, I've got some Icelandic stuff as well in my theory, by the way, so you might find that kind of interesting too.
Right. So yeah, let's get to it. Let's see if someone bring this down and bring yours up. Can you see it?
All right, yeah. So can you see me moving the
Yeah.
page around?
Yep.
All right, sweet. Okay, so first of all, I'm gonna sort of skim through the bits that I've already gone over before, because I know a lot of people watching now will have seen the last theory, but a few things have changed. So first of all, I've realized that Origins is the name of the show in foreign markets, which suggests that there's some sort of historical context if we didn't believe that those numbers were dates. And it's very clearly an American-focused show. I mean, they have a flapping American flag in the intro. You know, they show it in trailers. Everything seems to be American Civil War soldier history. We've got a cowboy from the 1950s. We've got all sorts of American iconography here. So we know it's an American show that focuses on American history. Then we go and look at the earliest date on Tabitha's wall. So you can see it here, 1506. That's the earliest date, which tells us that the origin event that started everything that we're seeing on the show happened before 1506. Now, let's for a moment ask ourselves, who actually reached North America before 1506? Because obviously this was around the time of Columbus. Well, it wasn't Columbus. Columbus never reached North America. The furthest he got was the Bahamas. He never actually sailed North America's coast, nor did he set foot on North American soil. So it can't be Columbus. And it actually only leaves us with 3. Now, that is, of course, if we're ignoring the Vikings that we were just discussing, who came, you know, in the late 800s, 900s, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
So 500 years before 1506, there were Vikings in Newfoundland and that general area, and they may have built pagan stone circles like we see on the show, and that might explain why we have a pagan stone circle in what may be an American area. And technically it's Canadian, but you'll see why in a minute. So anyway, so there's only 3 people who came to Newfoundland before 1506. One of them is John Cabot, who's an Italian explorer who came from Bristol, England. And the other 2 are the Corte Real brothers, who are Portuguese explorers. They would have known the explorers who had just discovered India. And in fact, they may have been traveling in the other direction, hoping to reach India themselves. There was a big misconception that if you sailed far west enough, you would eventually hit Asia. And a lot of people looking for a route through to Asia from the other direction, so they wouldn't need to go through the Suez Canal or all the way around the Cape of Africa. So the Corte Real brothers were also looking for India, and they may have encountered explorers who had also been to India, because India was discovered in 1498, I think it was, and they disappeared in 1501 and 1502. So there's 3 years where they may have encountered explorers. That will be important later. So anyway, so we have Cabot getting marooned in Newfoundland in 1498. And then he would have met with the Beothuk people. And by the way, here are the 3 boats. So one of them will represent Corte Real. The Corte Real, 2 of them will represent the Corte Real brothers, and one of them will represent John Cabot, probably the first one here.
And here, we were talking about this last time. You said, I thought it was 3 separate trips. You said, no, 2 trips, right? But 3 boats. So
yeah. I'll explain that in a little bit, because it is important for this theory as well. And it lines up very well with both Beothuk legend and the mythology of the show. So they arrive in Newfoundland. Let's start with John Cabot. He arrives in Newfoundland, in my theory, and there he meets the Beothuk people. Now, the Beothuk people, who all tragically passed away in the 1800s, they painted themselves in red dust. And that's actually, some people think, why Native Americans became known as Red Indians, because it was the explorers who were looking for India. They found North America. They thought they'd met Indian people, so they called them Indians. But in fact, it wasn't India. And they may have called them red because the Beothuk who they saw covered themselves in this red dust. It was part of their religion. What's also interesting, so you can see them here dancing around. It's a little blurry picture, but I think everyone knows there's red stick figures in the painting. And then we also know that the Tudors, and John Cabot would have been from the Tudor era, the Bristolian sailors would have been English Tudor people. The style of that time was wearing those white ruffles around your neck. And you can see very clearly here that there are two people wearing white ruffles.
And that's the picture from Ellis's room.
Yes, it is. And that's
that connected. That's what connects a lot of this, right? We're not just, even though we're doing these deep dives and pulling stuff from other sites, we're looking at what's in the show, what's in the background, and this is what's connecting the dots. And so Ellis draws a lot of pictures, and some of his pictures aren't of just Fatima, right? It's like you got the pictures, like you said, obvious Tudors, obvious dressed in that type of expedition gear from that time point. Like you said, the cave drawing has those red people, obvious people, and so it is connecting.
So another really cool thing is that Cabot's original ship that he first reached Newfoundland in, before he went back, got some more people, and then disappeared on his way back to Newfoundland, it was called the Matthew, which I think is a really cool hint because obviously we got the Matthews family. The other thing is that the site where most of the Beothuk artifacts have been found, all the archaeologists, is mostly in Boyd's Cove. It's probably the only settlement of the Beothuk that's ever been found by archaeologists. And isn't that interesting that our main character is called Boyd? And also, perhaps it's
really
coincidental because people do film in Canada because there's all sorts of tax benefits when you film in Canada, and they've got better like protective laws or something like that. I'm not entirely sure why, but Canada is cheaper to film in. So they've got that excuse to go there, but they're filming in Nova Scotia, which is just around the corner from Newfoundland. So they are filming in a location that would be contemporaneous to Newfoundland. It would have the same geography, similar plants, similar trees. The weather would be very similar. So it's almost like they're filming on location in some way.
Now, wait, before you scroll up, I mean, two things to point out. You said the ship, it was called the Matthew. Go down a little bit. So that's the one. And then the other one was Boyd's Bay.
Boyd's Cove,
Boyd's Cove. All right. So so there's two tie-ins right there.
Yeah, I think it's just little Easter eggs that the John Griffin might have put in. Maybe he went to Boyd's Cove, to do his research to write this story because he's going to end up writing about the Beothuk in season 4, maybe. So he's gone there to research the Beothuk. And obviously when researching Cabot, he would have seen one ship was called the Matthew. Maybe he threw that in there just to see if people noticed. So anyway, that's something that I think was intentional, but I guess we won't find out until later. So next, we've got John Cabot, right? He's marooned in Newfoundland. His ship has been destroyed in a storm. He's just managed to limp into the bay. They're starting to repair the ship, but in the end, they decide to co-live with the Beothuk. And we've got to remember that throughout history, explorers who were marooned supposedly did go and live with the indigenous people who were much more welcoming than the settlers were. And some say that the Croatoan legend, so as you know, there's a settlement, the Roanoke settlement, that mysteriously went missing, and all they found was the word Croatoan scratched into a tree. I mean, that mystery is not a mystery because the Croatoan tribe were nearby. They lived nearby. So they obviously were saying, we've gone to live with the indigenous people. And that's what happened to them. And then later, I read this somewhere. I'm not sure if it's one of those false facts that go around or if it's true or not. But I remember reading something about them doing tests on Croatoan people or people descended from the Croatoans and finding that they had, genetics from Europe, which would suggest that those the explorers the settlers who went mysteriously missing from Roanoke instead just integrated with the welcoming native tribes who obviously looked after them. So anyway, so that's what I believe is happening up until this point. But then we have the Corte Real brothers. Now, the Corte Real brothers had been to Newfoundland before, after Cabot. They may have got there. Maybe I don't think they interacted with Cabot. They probably landed on another part of the island while Cabot's there with the Beothuk living out his days with his crew and the Beothuk cohabiting together in that bay. And then I think the Corte Real brothers, they arrive and then they go home. And what did the Corte Real brothers do? They actually took many Beothuk captive. I think it was 57. Yeah, it says it here. They kidnapped 57 Beothuk, and they took them to Portugal, and every single Beothuk died within a year, I think it was. They all died. So these are terrible people. And then they went back to Newfoundland, probably to kidnap more.
Mhm.
And
that's when they got lost?
Sorry?
Is that when they got lost, when they went back?
That's when they got lost on the way back. Well, actually, what happened is Gaspar, who's the one who actually did the kidnapping, he went to Portugal. Then he was going back, and he went missing. And then his brother, like 6 months later or something, he says, "I'm going to go find him because he hasn't come back." So then he leaves, and he also doesn't come back. So both brothers went missing mysteriously within a year of each other, more or less. I can't remember how many months it was. But I believe that they arrived together, because here's something we've got to remember. And they made a big thing of this in season 1, and people have sort of forgotten, because obviously it was, if they might have watched it a while back. Sarah says that 2 cars were to blame for the massacre.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And then Victor also says 2 cars came and then everyone died, and he goes outside and starts digging the graves. Right?
Yep.
But then he later blames Christopher for all the deaths. So this weird aside about the 2 cars meaning something, I think they expect people to think that was just something to confuse us. But actually, I think what they're suggesting is that it was the arrival of these 2 ships that caused everyone in the camp to die. And I think what happened was there's too many people now, and a very harsh winter comes, and starvation happens. And this is what's going on in the show as well. So they've had all this time with no winter. And Victor says all the weather stayed the same. Now a new phase of this game has started, and they're recreating what the explorers went through, along with the Beothuk that they might have been living with.
Yeah, and to your point, I've heard that it's a cycle. That's what some people are saying, right? They're saying like the massacre happened with Victor years ago, and it's going to happen again. And so even connecting it to what you're saying, that this happened, with the Cabots and the expedition, and that was a massacre, and they're recreating that again and again through this, I guess, sort of like this game. Now
it's like a metaphor. It's a metaphor.
Yeah. And
it's a metaphor for what happened.
There also was some theories I saw where people were saying that the reason why they took 3, right, why they came for 3 in the new part of the game was that and that what Abby was trying to tell Boyd in the basement, as far as to let Julie, Randall, and who was the third one, and Amari die, because they would be sacrificed to whatever entity or whatever is controlling this place, and then that would have bypassed the massacre. Right.
But why would they not pick Ethan? Because surely he would make the best sacrifice, being all young and innocent.
Well, I think, from what you're saying, there's a couple people playing the game here, right? And I think you were saying the witch. I mean, I'm still, this the connection of the kids, supernatural and witches, to me seem like more on the nose. And so it could be, the witches has her eye on Ethan.
Let me tell you, I got some child sacrifice stuff coming up in a minute.
Okay, let's get to it.
So I think you'll be into that part, and it's Icelandic, which is Viking. So I think you'll also find that interesting. So anyway, so sorry to get distracted. Okay, so we've got the food shortage happening, same as in Fromland now. The trees changing, and then here's also something interesting. I learned that at the time, people who mutinied, and also people who blasphemed and said that God didn't exist, or they worshiped some other god, they would have their tongues cut out, which is represented by Sarah being told to cut out Toby's tongue, and the monster ripping out Kevin's tongue. So potentially there's something.
Okay, yeah, that could be something.
Now, there was also an Augustinian friar who accompanied Cabot, and I believe that when things start going wrong, when people start to starve, when people start to when food won't grow, they start to say witches, because during this time the Inquisition had just begun. And the Inquisition was when friars went traveling around. They go to a village where there was a strange old lady or a creepy man, and people would say he's a witch. Then they would interrogate that person, and they'd be blamed for all the bad things that were going on. And sometimes they would burn them at the stake, and other times they would drown them in a lake. And other times they would torture them for a while and imprison them in a cave somewhere, or in a shed or a shack, or in their local jail. So the reason why I believe a witch is involved, outside of the fact that there genuinely was a friar who accompanied Cabot and he was there to start a mission. He was there to convert the native people. So I mean, according to history, that was what his plan was. So he probably tried to do that, and that's why there's no Bibles in Fromland, because this game is controlled by the religious deities of the Beothuk. So obviously they wouldn't want some holy book belonging to a different god in their land.
And get this too, there's no priests in Fromland anymore, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting that they targeted Katri because I think they hate priests.
I said that was a hit. I said it was a hit when I saw it, because if you look at that scene, when the van pulled up and they all ran in, and Father Katri was at the end, you could see 2 or 3 other creatures down the street, right? And so where did that one creature come from? And all season, every time a creature came up to someone, they had their human face and then they switched. This came at them with the creature face on. It just swung from the beginning.
I didn't consider that at all, man. That's true. That could have been a hit. He was like really targeted.
Yeah, and I was joking, like, but I said that the creature was in the car with them from the because how did it get that quick?
I think she was that creepy nurse, but that would have been hilarious if that was how they revealed it. They were just like, "Surprise! I'm a monster." That'd be kind of funny.
That was funny.
Anyway, sorry. So here's the scarf in the bus. So in this scene when Bacta, I think it's the end of episode 2, Bacta gets on the bus and she walks down the aisle, and there's this pink scarf that has been perfectly draped over the seat, right? And there's a book called Crumbs that flashes up just before this scene, which is basically saying, look, here's some breadcrumbs, here's some clues, have a look at this scene. And there's 2 headphones, one's black, one's white. I believe that represents the sun and the moon players. And then you've got some creepy cables draping over the side. And that represents the sea monster, as I've said before. And I'll come on to the sea monster later, and the man in black. And then you've got this pink scarf. And in the scene where Smiley comes in and murders those 2 old people, that scarf is not draped on that seat. So clearly the set designer has placed it there perfectly, very carefully, and then done some blood on it, right? So if you look, this is what the scarf looks like. I remember last live that I did with you, I had that witch outline, but I didn't show you the original to compare it to. So here's the original for those who are interested. To me, that looks like a witch on a broom, very crudely drawn. I mean, it is a very rough stick figure, so you don't know what it could be. But for me, I believe this is a clear hint of a witch. I think that's what they're trying to depict here. You've got the back of the broom sort of getting wider. You've got this sort of wide-brimmed hat that goes up and has a crook. That's sort of what witches look like. They've got references to witches like the Yellow Brick Road. Anyway, I'm gonna bring that up in a second. But anyway, I thought I'd show you that. We've also got the witch in the children's drawings.
Look, that's a good one.
So this is a witch right here. And then you've got a demon here, which I thought was kind of interesting. You've got what looks like a ship with cannons. They've obviously given it a face.
Yeah.
And then these ones I think are just red herrings. They're here to distract you and make you think, oh, it's aliens. It must be aliens because look at that alien drawing. You got a black cat. That's a witch thing. In fact, in the Halloween decorations, you've got pretty much everything but a witch. You got a witch's black cat, but you don't have a witch. And then obviously as well in Victor's drawings, he's got this old lady with the wrinkles under her eyes and the lines going down to show that she's old. And we haven't seen this person before. She's wearing gray and the boy wears white. So I don't know. I think this is the witch and that he may have encountered her or had vision.
Pause right there, because this was a big connection for me. I mean, especially when Elgin, went through his whole bathtub scene, and when this, sort of, creepy old wrinkled woman, was holding him down, and then seeing these pictures started surfacing online. And I was doing my review by going back through some episodes and looking at the drawings, and I saw this and I was like, wow, it kind of did look somewhat similar to hair in the face.
Yeah, and what's interesting as well is in the scene on the right, because the one on the left is a photo that Ethan leaked online of a scene that they never put in the show. It looked like a scene that was cut, where he had these drawings splayed out in the basement. So you can get a much clearer look at at what this old lady looks like you see both sides of her face. But in the one that I'm talking about on the right, which is in the actual show, they actually have a hand move it into frame
Mm.
in the bit that they flash it. They want us to see it. They want that to be a clue. So I believe that this is the witch character, and we'll see if I'm right. To be honest, the witch part of the show, the witch part of my theory is probably the least backed up of them all.
Mhm.
So it's the one of the major elements of my theory. It's the one I'm least confident on. I'm much more confident on the tarot and the board games that the game is being played on. But for now, let's assume there's a witch, because I've seen enough evidence to think that there is one.
Yeah, I agree. There has to be a witch. I mean, there are a lot of similarities, and I did some research on the witches as well. I mean, they use things like runes, talismans. Like you
Yeah,
said, they
yeah,
kidnap the kids, and people were trying to figure out why would they have those kids down there, right? And I was saying that they weren't kidnapped, right? Because if you listen to Victor, he didn't say my mom went to go save the kidnapped kids, right? I think he would have
yeah,
been specific if they were taken, right?
yeah,
Or even if they were just a vision. I believe
yeah,
they were lured in because they weren't strapped into those sacrificial tables, right? They were kind of just
yeah.
laying there. And so I think that they might have been lured there, and they could have been used for like a witch's brew, pretty much.
It's possible. I mean, I believe now that it's not just the 4 players playing. I believe they have 7 spectators as well, and I'll get into that in a bit. Okay, so we've also got the hut. I believe this is where the talismans were left. And I think this hut here is where the witch was imprisoned while they tortured her and interrogated her to see if she was really a witch. And you've got these birds flying above, sort of like vultures circle, because
Mhm.
she's trapped, sort of starving in this cave. And then I also think that she has a child, and this is going to be important for the show, but we haven't met him yet. And this, you can see here, this smaller stick figure and this adult stick
Yeah,
figure,
larger. Yeah.
that looks to me like a mother and child. And this is taken in the top right hand corner of the one with the symbol, the 3-rooted symbol, or the 3-tree symbol. Still not quite sure what it is. Anyway, so she gives birth to a son, and I think Fatima's pregnancy mirrors her pregnancy as well, because she must have got pregnant while she was there, probably. So they start burning witches. I don't think she was the only one accused of being a witch. I think it's possible, even, although I think that some people would be offended if this was in a real TV show, but it's possible that they actually are accusing a Beothuk woman of being a witch, and they're burning a Beothuk, and they're cutting out their tongues and doing terrible things to them.
Mhm.
That's possible. But for my theory, I think to not offend anyone, I think that it would probably be more likely that they had brought a woman with them on board, and they were blaming various explorers of being witches and burning them and cutting out their tongues and all sorts of things.
Now on the pregnancy as well.
Yeah,
Now also doing a deep dive on the rune, the symbol. It
yeah,
looks like a combination of symbols, right? So I was trying to separate
mm,
them, and there's an obvious symbol of protection that's in the Elder Futhnark language, but there also is a part of it that is the sign for fertility, right? And so I had guessed it through translating the runes that there was someone going to get pregnant. And I believe that the name Fatima was the name of goddess of fertility in another religion
yeah,
or something like that. And there's been theories about the hand of Fatima and all these
yes,
other things.
yes.
And so I did predict that Fatima was going to get pregnant. Plus, I could already tell you that I knew her and Ellis was humping, right? I mean, I already knew that was going on, right? I mean,
I think we all knew.
he was drawing
I think
her
we all
half
knew.
naked from the first episode, right? I'm like, yeah,
Yeah,
he probably just smashed, you know. But so we knew that that was going to happen. But then you were putting it in another way as well, that there was we think it's going to be twins, right? Uh, and I know you were talking about it, but I sent you that picture that in the diner there was 2 chairs or whatever, and 2 high chairs. And so I thought that was really interesting. But then there were some other theories that there was if you look at Ellis' room, you see Ellis, Fatima, right? And it kind of looks like a Garden of Eden, but then you see the snake. And I was able to interview Pega Gofari, who plays Fatima, and we talked a little bit about it, about the drawing and the picture, and about the possibility of her giving birth. And she talked about she said that she heard the same theory about a serpent baby. And then we hear Ellis talking to Christy in either, I believe, episode 8 or 9, where he was kind of like scared that his baby being born in this place would turn into something. So there's little clues that they're pushing towards that something could be wrong with the baby, from her having it in this place. And Fatima did say that in the regular world, she was not able to have kids. She was told that she was not able to have kids.
Yeah.
And so this place was kind of torturing her by giving it to her. But Donna, told her that it was a blessing no matter where.
Yeah, and I agree with her. And I actually think that Donna healed Fatima, but we'll get onto that a bit later.
That's right, because she's
Okay,
the
so anyway,
witch.
yeah. So anyway, look, we got burning skeletons. I think that they were burning other witches and stuff. And she decides to summon a demon. Basically, she does some sort of spell, and then basically she ends up summoning the devil of the Beothuk. And this, and there are two mythologies at play here. So there is legend in many different religions and many different cultures of one doing a deal with the devil, having some sort of contract in place with him, and then the other is the death playing a game with someone, the Grim Reaper playing a game with someone who's saying, "Don't kill me. If I beat you in a game, can I live another 10 years or however long?" And he says, "Fine, you pick the game," right? So I think in this case, there is a box of different games that they brought with them to play on the ships, and they brought them from all the places that they visited. So India, Iceland, Cabot had been to Iceland. The Corte Reals would have met explorers who had been to India, perhaps received gifts from them. So there is a whole bunch of different games there, including tarot playing cards from France. And I believe that they basically, he says, "Okay, is that the game?" And before she can answer, they're just sucked all into Fromland, and all the games are represented in this show. And everyone who gets sucked into this game becomes a metaphor for the cards, the game pieces, the board game, everything. Every single element is represented by a person, except for obviously some like the tower and things like that are not. But generally speaking, even the dice, I believe, are people. And I'll get onto that. So anyway, so that is how this happens. Now, let me get into the Beothuk, because I think some people find this the most compelling part of my theory. So we know that the Beothuk suffered atrocities in history. So even after this, there were many, they were accused of all sorts of things. The Beothuk had a very tragic, very bad treatment by settlers. There were atrocities. In fact, someone even wrote a book called "The People Who Were Murdered for Fun" about the Beothuk, because he theorized that that's what happened. And there's a unconfirmed, unsubstantiated stories of hundreds of Beothuk slaughtered in a bay for fun. So, and that may be one of the reasons why the monsters torture and kill people to death, because perhaps that is what happened to them. But I don't want to speculate. It's a very sensitive subject. But that is, I think, if I'm talking about the Beothuk, I should educate people a little bit about what happened to them. So there's two other reasons why the Beothuk died out. Although some people do claim ancestry from the Beothuk distantly, from having tested bones against modern genetics. There's a guy in Tennessee who apparently is almost 100% Beothuk. I don't know how true that is. But anyway, they also died out because they were pushed from their traditional hunting grounds by the settlers, so they couldn't get enough food, and a lot of them starved to death. And then and another thing that happened was that a lot of them died of smallpox because of this European settlers bringing them. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of that, because I think when you're talking about the Beothuk, it's important to let people know a bit about their history, rather than just talking about the fun and exciting parts of their religion. So anyway, so what we know of the Beothuk is that there is only a few fragments of text about them, because a Beothuk woman, I can't pronounce her name, I think it was something like Shawani Dat or something like that, and they actually named the Beothuk Museum in Boyd's Cove after her. They actually changed the name to be her name, because she was one of the last of her kind. And in fact, I think most people consider her the last of her kind, and there's a bronze statue that you can see in Newfoundland of her. And let me tell you about their religion. She wrote it down, and that's all we know about their religion, is based on what she wrote down and what she drew. So first of all, they worship the moon and the sun. Now, I don't think I need to go into detail about why we know moon and sun iconography is all through the show, not just on the talisman.
Talismans,
It's
yep.
hidden everywhere. They also feared a devilish man in black. And if you look here, that's him. Basically, you've got the black figure off to the side of the kids. He looks a little bluer when you see the top half of him, but I still believe this character represents the man in black. And I also believe that this figure who's all in black with red eyes is also the man in black.
And so look, that figure on the left, it says Epics at the bottom. That's an official picture.
Yes, it is.
Okay. But it was when it was Epic. So it was Epic first, then went to MGM.
Yeah,
so that was
that's from season 1 when it was still Epics, I think.
Okay. Yep. And there have been pictures like that too. There was a picture from a party that the cast had. They had like some of Victor's drawings up, and it was ones that they didn't release, and they had a lot more detail and gave away a lot more clues. So there's tons and tons of pictures out there that
I just emailed you a picture that we can look at the end if you want, which has literally every single one of Victor's drawings on there, and there's some new ones in there that are super interesting, and they do feature in this theory. And I only got it yesterday, so that's why I'm going for a Google Doc instead of Reddit, because I really want to perfect my theory, my final theory, before I post it. Okay, so we know that there was a devilish man in black. We also know, and this is important, that there was a sea monster who is never described, but she just wrote, we had a sea monster, we were scared of them. There's also a spirit world, so just like in Fromland, there's a spirit world, there's the real world in Fromland. Fromland is the spirit world. And also birds carrying the souls of the dead. I haven't been able to make a connection there, actually, but I want to give as full an overview of the religion as I can. It really was a very limited amount of information that we have. This is almost everything we know about the Beothuk religion. But there is one other interesting thing about the Beothuk religion. They had a legend, and it's sort of their religion. It's about the white people who came to Newfoundland. Their legend said that the first white people to come to Newfoundland were good, and then the second group of people who came to Newfoundland were bad. And that aligns with this idea of Cabot coming first, having a peaceful existence with them, then the Corte Real's brothers coming, and everyone starts dying because of starvation, because of atrocities, because of attempted conversion, people being blamed as witches, all sorts of things, right? Oh, that's interesting. That is interesting. I have seen witches' hats that have a tilt, though. I think that perhaps witches' hats may even be inspired by the original hats that the Inquisition wore. So they are very similar. So that's an interesting point, Misery. Okay, so here's the other thing. We know about 300 Beothuk words. And after I came up with this theory and the Ankui kids appeared, I was like, I got to go and find if there's a word like Ankui in the Beothuk language. So I scroll down, and I come across one of the 300 words, which is Anui. And I was like, similar, but not exact. So I ignored it for a little while. And then I did some more research on Native American languages. Now, Native American languages are very diverse and complex, and I'm not an expert at all. So you have to take this with a pinch of salt. But the roots language that Beothuk came from, people say it was one of the Algonquian languages. And in Algonquian languages, and also in other Native American languages, they will place a K in the word to pluralize it. So tree becomes trees. However, it would probably be more accurate for it to be Anuik instead of Ankui. Technically speaking, probably, because we don't know what their language was. We just know some words, and we can make a guess. I believe that they put the K in the middle because it's technically correct. We don't know where the K would have gone, but it makes it a word that sounds similar to Anku and all sorts of other crazy words, right? So I think that's why they placed the K in the middle rather than at the end.
That was an interesting point.
I believe that Anku means trees, basically.
Yeah. And I was along the same lines because during the Civil War flashback, when Jade saw the symbol, it was on the trees, right? And that, to me, it was just carved a little bit too hard, right? Like the rest of the symbols had been, appeared in blood. They had kind of been appeared on the ceiling, but that was like somebody took time to dig into it, and it just made me think, like, connecting with Victor in the forest and say the trees are moving. So it had to be alive, or had to be something in this place. And then seeing that symbol, I was like, I bet you they're the trees. but didn't
Yeah.
know that they would have been in the situation they were, as far as the kids underneath looking up at them.
Yeah, and I think that's something that I quite liked about the season finale, is that we got a hint that the kids and the trees are connected in some way, and that this
Mhm.
this is a further, support for my theory. But we we don't know yet. This is all speculation, but I'm basically just sharing with you guys what I think in my head when I watch the show. I'm pretty confident that it's right, but so are many other people. So there's a good chance I'm wrong. But I have to think about it in this way of like, I believe this to be true. Otherwise, you just don't come up with new ideas about it. Anyway, let's see. So here's what's really interesting. The Man in Black has a sea monster. And I believe that when the showrunners were like, we need to represent a sea monster, how are we going to do this? They looked at the sea animals in Newfoundland. And there are certain types of shark that swim around Newfoundland that could be interpreted as a monster. But what is the other deadly, dangerous animal that lives in Newfoundland's bays and Newfoundland is famous for? It's the red lion's mane jellyfish. And if you look at the symbol, it kind of looks like a jellyfish with the tentacles and the bulbous head at the top. And I also noticed this stain in the church. You can see it here. In the church, there is a stain on the wall. It also has an anchor scratched next to it, or what I think looks like an anchor. And I believe that this is a more sort of accurate version of this. And this is what a red lion's mane jellyfish looks like, so that you can compare the two. But isn't it a coincidence that that it is red, and that there is a red dangerous sea creature and there was a sea monster? So I believe that this is a lion's mane jellyfish represented as the Beothuk sea monster. And here's something that I didn't mention this when we were talking, Movie Guru, because I didn't know it. I hadn't made this connection. But what does Boyd say when he's having his conversation with Donna in the greenhouse, and she's asking him about what he saw, and he's not telling her anything? And then instead he tells her about this Marine that died in his arms, who they
Brian Kelly,
because he effing loved jelly. Why would he have this random story about jelly just shoved into it? Why? Because they're referencing the jellyfish. It's a hint, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it could be connected. I can see that, and that was a real interesting conversation, and I was thinking a lot about that conversation, just from how that whole scene played out. Right, the two people from the bus, one's name was Brian, one name was Kelly. Right, Kelly had to watch while Brian died. Boyd watched when his military buddy Brian Kelly died in his hands from shrapnel. Like it was, and you're right. I think that conversation, especially the way it ended, held more than we know at this moment, right? And I didn't pick up that part about the jellyfish or him saying jelly, but I do remember him saying there was something like that about the kid. But
Yeah,
I
he
was
said, so
trying
there's
to
a
pick up.
brand. There's a brand of jelly in America called Schmuckers, apparently.
Yeah, Smucker. Yeah,
Schmuckers
yeah.
jelly. And they were like, we called him Schmuckers because he loved jelly. And I just
Mhm.
thought to myself,
Okay,
what
yeah, I
on
remember that
earth
part.
are they talking about? Why would they have? It's just like Elgin talking about the owls. You
Mhm,
know that means something because it's such
mhm,
a
mhm,
random thing to write into a show.
mhm,
As a writer, there's something called Chekhov's gun, which is if you walk into a room and the writer says there was a gun on the wall, that means that gun is going to be used at some point. Otherwise, what was
mhm,
the point
mhm.
in putting it in the scene?
Yeah.
So again, I feel like this jelly thing is a hint at the jellyfish. It's just a bit of much of a
Mhm.
coincidence for me. And
And
then
you
the
know,
other thing, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, since this season ended, I've been trying to do more connection about Boyd's whole boat thing, right? Like because that
Mm,
ended up just being an abandoned, plot line. He was
yeah,
this boat captain, right? And then okay,
yeah.
like you're saying, ocean boat, ocean jellyfish. I could kind of
Oh,
get
yeah.
some sort of awkward connection there.
I mean, I have a feeling that Boyd's boat is going to be somewhere in Fromland, and he's going to have to drive it to where he needs to go, and then a jellyfish is going to attack him. That's my theory. Or during a flood, maybe. But we'll see. But anyway, the other interesting thing about the jellyfish is that the location where they found the Viking ruins in Newfoundland was called Jellyfish Cove. So
Mm,
again, another connection to the history of Newfoundland and the first people to reach America, because I believe this show is telling us the story of America through all the mythology, right? And I think that's another hint at the jellyfish. It's Jellyfish Cove is where the Viking ruins were found. So anyway, let's continue. So here's another really interesting thing about the Beothuk is that there's very few artifacts that we found, and two of the main ones are game pieces and these talismans shaped like crow's feet, or sorry, seabirds' feet. So let me zoom in a little bit here. Can you see that, Movie Guru?
Yeah.
So if you look here, this is the talisman's like central design.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you look at how the Beothuk talismans are designed, do they not look kind of similar with these crossed shapes coming in and out and then back in again with the bobble at the top of the head? Don't they look like humans with their arms thrown in the air here? And then the legs coming out, and this one has the legs coming back up. I believe that there is a similarity in the designs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when you showed me this in the last one, I definitely saw it. And seeing it again, and you pointed out, I could definitely see it. And you said those symbols are tied to the Beothuk people.
Yeah, these are talismans found
Mhm.
in Boyd's Cove, I believe.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
and they look very similar to the talisman, and they are talismans of some sort. They're
Mhm.
religious items.
Mhm.
And I also found really interesting this carving in the wall of the church by the door, and I think it is kind of shaped like these talismans here. You've got this sort of wider bit at the top, and then it swoops in, and then you've got the sort of trident at the bottom, and this one has like a trident at the bottom, and then it swoops in, and then it opens up at the top. So I thought that was an interesting little connection. And then in the caves, there's much better photos of this. I just haven't updated this.
Yeah.
But you can see this spiraling triangle pattern here.
Mhm.
And the Beothuk game pieces that they used as dice also have this spiraling triangular pattern coming out. So I thought that was another interesting connection.
Yeah, I really like the game piece one, especially connecting it to the cave drawing, because there were a couple of symbols on the cave that I just couldn't figure out. Or, I thought I came close to what looked like the infinity sign,
Yeah.
and then I saw this one, and I was like, I can't even tell what that is. I like the game piece. It's hard with the talisman. I can see your connection there, with the talismans from the Beothuk people, but
Yeah.
there's so many. To me, the talisman symbol is a couple of symbols put together. Like I said, the
Yeah.
middle part is the protection. There's also a
believe
part
that
that's
too.
fertility, right? And then there's also the F symbols around it, which are like the ash trees. But
Yeah.
it makes sense, like, hey, you can tie all this in just that one piece, right? It looks made, right? Somebody obviously made them, right?
Yeah.
And when they were making them, they had to add some sort of supernatural element to it. And you're right, there is a huge tie with the cave drawings, like you said, the people in red, the Beothuks, and then also, like we said, could be the witches, and it also could be the Vikings. Like these all are elements of the same thing.
Yeah, I'm glad you think so. I mean, a lot of people don't see what I'm seeing. Sometimes I feel like I'm crazy, and that's okay. I know people think I'm reaching, and that's absolutely fine. Like as long as people are polite to me, because I'm just having fun. If someone
Yeah,
comes in
yeah.
and goes super rude to me, then I don't like it. But if someone's polite and they're like, I don't believe any of this, man, and they're polite about it, I'm like, oh, cool, no worries. Tell me what you think. Let's talk about it.
I mean, the
Oh,
whole
why
thing's a
12
reach.
talismans?
The show is a
will tell
reach.
you. I will tell you why 12 talismans in a bit.
Okay.
Super interesting what I found. Anyway, let's keep going. All right, so people hate this. I'm not going to go into why. Last stream I did, loads of people who like read tarot were saying you're so wrong. This is the characters don't link to tarot at all. I just need to be clear about this. First of all, I have nothing against people reading tarot. I think it's legitimate and very interesting, and these esoteric arts are super worth exploring. However, in the context of the show, they are playing with 1500s playing cards, which is what originated the tarot cards that are used in mystical readings today. Okay, they are not being used as the tarot that was invented in the 1800s. These are literally being played like the King of Spades, the Jack of Hearts. These like the Joker. That's the context for which these tarot cards are being played with. So it's got nothing to do with telling the future, people's personalities, what they're going through in their lives, any of that. It's purely with how the card looks and the role of the card within the context of tarot.
Yeah, you explained it when we did the last live. I think that the American version of tarot is very much, different than the game you were explaining. This was more of the original compared to the commercialized one that we get a lot of times that might be, tied to some astrological signs or tied to something
Sure.
else. This was more so you were saying the original form of what the tarot is.
Yeah, like all the playing cards that we play with today, they are descended from
Mhm.
the tarot cards that we used to play with, which themselves were descended from Moorish cards, which themselves were descended from Egyptian cards. And the Egyptian cards may have even come from China. So there's a long chain of cards that ended up having them look like the Fool, the Empress, the Hierophant, the Hermit, the Magician. These are all from sort of like the history of where the cards came from. And people who believe in tarot and tarot reading, they believe that this has meaning, but and it may well do. But within the context of the show, they're just looking at them as the playing cards. So if someone represents a card and that card is all about fertility and love and hope, that's not to say that that character is all about fertility, love, and hope. It just so happens that they are the card that was later assigned those attributes by tarot readers.
Now,
I hope
looking at
that
this picture, what is it? Well, we know that the two things in the middle were the finger puppets that Ethan was playing with in the first episode, right? Where
yeah.
Julie it was telling him the story of Norman, right, in the Lake of Tears. And I don't know what that is to the left. Is that either a smooth talisman or
It's
is
a
that an
ball.
egg?
It's
Oh,
a
it's a
ball.
ball.
It's a multicolored ball,
Okay,
which comes
and
into
then
this later. So I
okay.
didn't realize this when I was watching the show because they kept showing games, and I
Mhm.
was thinking, well, they're just telling us that it's a game, and they've sort of put these items in there to confuse the cards. So if you just see cards, you're going to think the cards mean something. But if you see a card and some bunch of other toys, you think, oh, then it doesn't. Then you're not going to pay attention to the card. But actually, it all seems to mean something, as I've later found out. But anyway, let's keep going. So remember, Jade mentions France about his grandma coming from France, and the game is French tarot. That's the that's the
Mm.
rules of this game.
See,
Um,
suspect Jim.
so check this out, okay? So in modern times, they're used to see the future, divination, right? But not in this game. Remember, the song at the start of the show is "The future's not ours to see." Ki sera sera. It's telling us that it's tarot cards, but not in the context of seeing the future. I hope that makes, that's just my theory, but I think that's why they picked that song.
Mhm.
All right, so let me keep going. So these are some of the references for cards in the show. So you see a card on the steps the first time Tabitha sees it. These down here, I no longer believe they are cards. I think they may be dice, or they may
That's
represent the
right.
children in the ritual that summoned the Beothuk devil.
Mhm.
I don't know what ritual happened to summon him, but I believe that that is how he was summoned, is some sort of ritual, potentially a sacrifice of some kind. We'll have to see. But I do still believe that this is somebody trapped inside a card, like a tarot card. I still believe that. It's too square. I'm 100% certain that tarot is part of this, and it's sort of like one of those face cards, like a King of Hearts. You see the body on the card. That's what I believe. Now,
Before you scroll through, just looking back when we were talking about the symbol, right? And
yeah,
now that we know those are I guess you call it the sacrificial stones, right? I'm noticing two things now. For one, the arrangement is different, right? Because when Jay goes in the cave, we see them in a circle, right? And we see them this not in a
yeah,
circle. Then when Jay goes down there, he sees them on the sacrificial tables. Here
yeah,
we see them around it, right? And there seems to be more, right? There's more people than there is stones there, right? There's
yeah,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but there's only 7 of those tables. So 1,
yeah,
2, 3, 4, 5,
yeah.
6, 7. So that's interesting, how that
We don't
doesn't
know what
match
it
up.
means. I
Yeah.
don't know what it means. I think it could still be that they're represented with playing cards, and those stones were
Mhm,
just put there to mess with us, those
mhm,
altars that the kids were lying on. It's
mhm,
possible. But I would say, to be honest, I won't include this in my Reddit theory because people are going to say, no, those are the stones. There's 7 of them. There's 7 in the
mhm.
cave. I won't believe anything different. But it's fine. I don't need it for my theory to work. Because look, here's Jade saying to Kenny, oh, what's going on? I'm going to figure it out. And the whole time he's holding a pack of cards for no reason at all. Like he just holds them in his hand and he flashes it very briefly so that you know what he's holding, and then it goes away. you know, and then he puts it down on a table, and then later it's the exact same place that Boyd sees the chessboard when he's talking to Father Katri. I mean, there's so many game references in this show. Like anyone watching the show, they must know that some sort of game is being played between beings of some kind. That I just feel like anyone who doesn't think that isn't watching the same show I am, because they just have so many game references throughout. You know, even when Donna is all upset because the colony house had a slaughter happen in it, she turns to Boyd and she's like, "I'm gonna get my game face on again.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it." I mean, there's so many references like that. I don't even bother writing them down because there's just so many of them. But anyway, okay. So here's the Uno cards scattered around when Megan's dead, which I found kind of interesting. And then there's just I haven't included all the screenshots I have of people playing cards in the background, but here's just a few. A pack of cards right where Elgin's playing. You got someone with all these cards laid out in a triangle behind. You've got someone shuffling cards randomly in the background in one of the scenes. When Julie's talking to Elgin on the porch, there's people playing games behind there. There's this pack of like really square sort of playing card looking postcards in the post office, which I thought was a little bit of a clue, but not like a too heavy one. Again, there's just her, Tilly playing solitaire. There's these people playing cards on a table here. There's just so many cards in the background throughout this show, more than any other like game piece or game board or anything. Cards keep showing up. I believe that the cards are like the main game that's being played, and then the other games sort of fit around it.
No, okay. I like the card theory, and you're right. We see a lot of references, and I mean, I understand that if you don't have TV, right? What else do people do, right? They play board games, they play cards, but I think the connections you've made with what they're doing and the numbers and the symbolism behind it comes together very well.
Well, thank you. I just feel like that it's a clue, and it's got to mean something. And when you then make these next connections that I'm going to show you, it seems to me that it's a game of tarot. But you guys can judge for yourselves. So we know that cards mean something. What's also really interesting is there's that 7 and 8 together, one on top of the other on the steps, making 78. There are 78 cards in a tarot deck. There's a 4 on the steps as well. And I believe in this game there are 4 players. And there's also 14 cards per suit. So, obviously, so there's 14 coins, 14 swords, 14 cups, etc. Just like, there's however many diamonds and hearts and clubs and spades, right? So there's 14 cards per suit, which I also thought was kind of interesting, and 14 people die at Colony House. People throw out numbers, and it could have been 15 people. Could have been 16 people. We wouldn't know because we didn't see everyone die. So they picked the number 14 for a reason. And I believe it's because it's just another hint at the games that are being played. The relevant numbers crop up. Just like later Elgin is going to say, how long since he was stabbed? And Elgin says 25 minutes. That number 25, I believe, is also important. And I will explain in a bit. So anyway, let me skim through.
Who says that? 25 minutes.
Yeah, that's how long since he had been stabbed by Dale when Christy asks Elgin, how long ago was he stabbed? Elgin says 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, I'm going to rattle through because I know I've been talking for too long. So sorry about that. But look, so here's the hangman. Jim is always around rope, and sometimes it's pointed at his neck. He hangs upside down several times. He hangs upside down in the RV as well. You've also got him climbing trees, the only character to climb a tree. And you've got this halo of a dream catcher behind him. And when you look at the halo around the hangman, he's one of the few to have a halo behind him. So and also when Jade has his nightmare with the Civil War soldier as vision, when he gets awoken again, you see all this sunlight, and then Jim's head sort of gets in the way of the sunlight and he sort of materializes there. Again, another reference to the Hanged Man. I mean, this is the most obvious one. I think they really wanted people to connect Jim to the Hanged Man to make this tarot connection. Because but they were also comfortable doing it without making it have no other option, because obviously there's the hanging upside down of the Norse mythology, and they have the symbols that look Norse on the talismans. So, all right, so here's Boyd. Boyd, look at him stepping over this log like it's a cliff when he sees the dog. The fool is known for following a little dog off a cliff. because he's a fool and he just follows anything anywhere, right? And you've got Boyd chasing dogs all over the show. Even at the end of the season, the last thing we see is a dog coming and Boyd looking like he's going to follow it again.
Going into that real quick. I know you in the middle of the theory. Where do you think he went when the dog showed up? And
it's the boy in
because
white. It's the boy in white sending the dog.
And that was my theory too, that the dog works with the boy in white because I mean, in the flashback with Victor, he saw the dog, he also saw the boy in white, and they kind of both went in the same direction.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
I think, and now that the season's over, I kind of think they're all the same thing. We haven't seen them in the same place all at once, right? It's like you haven't seen Bruce Wayne, Batman in the same place. And so I think that he might be different versions that they present themselves, because remember Sarah said, I don't think that was a little boy, right? When she was talking about the boy in white, right? But it looked like a boy to us, right? And then there's been a lot of talk about Abby, that not really being Abby, right? And we can all believe that. You're right. It probably wasn't Abby, but what it was, but it appears in a form that you are comfortable with. We've seen that in tons and tons of movies. The dog we've seen, and even Martin. My thought now is differently on Martin. That Martin was exactly what he was supposed to be, right? He had the Marine tattoo on his arm, right? These things were soothing for Boyd and helped him put his guard down so he could affect him. And remember, Sarah said it was laughing at you, right? For bringing it back to town. So this was all trickery going on. This kind of cuts into my Viking theory with the whole thing about it, the Loki and the trickery. Like that was a big thing for me. Like there's a lot of trickery going on here.
Sure. Yeah. It's totally possible. I have some theories on that, which I'll talk about in a little bit. So anyway, the other interesting thing about Boyd is that he picks stuff up in bundles a lot. Like he picks up the talismans in his shirt in a bundle. You see him picking up this bag here, even though it has handles, he bundles it up. I'm sure the director told him to pick it up that way. And you can see here that the Fool always has a bundle, and he's known for having bundles of things. We've got Ellis. He's the Lovers. He painted this. And isn't it similar to the Lovers card on
very similar.
You got Tilly, so he got Temperance. She's got 2 cups that she's pouring water between, and look at how they set this up. And you look at her with these 2 cups here, and then she's got this this triangle symbol.
2 cups.
You got these triangles on her shirt right there.
Yeah, and we've heard, specifically that everything is put there for a reason. I did do an interview with Elgin, and I believe his name is Nathan Simmons, who plays Elgin, and I asked him about the crow shirt, right? Because that was a big topic of debate, and he said that shirt was specifically made by Jack Bender, it's for him to wear. So we know there's a lot of symbolism into the clothing, and so that's a really good catch. I didn't think about that about Tilly. I was wondering more about some of Ellis's shirts and things like that. But now I also could be Tilly as well. I mean, Tilly as well.
Yeah, it could be. We don't know too much, but to be honest, the clues are so vague that if you want to solve the show, you have to make some leaps. So anyway, here's Father Katri, and he is the Hierophant. You have these 3 crosses here stacked up together, just like this religious implement here has 3 crosses. You've also got this shot where he's in the church on his own, and he sort of raises his arm, and you can see the if you follow the beams, they've got this sort of grid pattern with a beam going down the middle. And this door here. I mean, I didn't make it as thick so that you could see his arm, but it follows this pattern. Also, the Hierophant is always shown between 2 gray pillars, and I found it interesting that they had a few shots of him. I've got the whole wide shot here so that you can see it, just sitting in meditating between these two pillars. Obviously, there's more in the whole circle, but the shot has him in between 2 pillars. And obviously, the Hierophant, he is a religious priest. He is a priest, so you've got that connection there as well. Jade, I believe, is strength. So he wears a cat shirt everywhere, and you've got this lion here. And then you got the infinity symbol above the head. And I noticed that they had him have the cables knotted in an infinity symbol here. So I believe that jade represents strength. So let me just rattle through these now. Ethan, he's the magician because he's got a wizard staff. Tabitha's the high priestess because she hands Katri a copy of the Bible and has visions. Fatima is the empress. I didn't realize this last time, but I finally realized that the lovers is not 2 characters. It's got to be 1 card, right? And because I thought that Fatima and Ellis are always together, which is why they represent 1 card. But then I see Fatima going off and doing other things and Ellis going off and doing other things, like when he gets stabbed and stuff. So I believe that Fatima is the empress because there's the rose motif with the empress. Nathan's the emperor because of the 2 goats. We've done Katri, we've done Ellis. Bacta is the chariot because she drives a coach. We got Victor. He lives alone for many years, just like a hermit, and he carries the torch in key scenes. We've got the Wheel of Fortune, Elgin. He has these sort of prophetic dreams. Owls signify prophecy in some religions, and his name is the name of a famous watchmaker. Tom the barman is Justice. So here's something interesting. If you watched my last show, I had Tom the barman as Justice because of process of elimination. I had to put him somewhere, and I put him in there. But in this scene, I rewatched it, and in this scene, Tom the barman says, "I feel like I'm holding court," which is what a justice.
I do remember that. Yeah, I remember that.
So now I'm through the process of elimination identifying people's cards because I've got so many of the others correct. I believe. I just thought it was a really cool coincidence that I started. I mean, obviously it might be confirmation bias, but I remember being like, let's see what Tom the barman is. Let me skim through this whole show and see every scene he's in to see if I can find a clue. And then I have him say that. So anyway, we got Jim. Everyone knows he's the hangman now. Or that's my theory anyway. We got Death. So Death, I believe, is Mr. Liu. He always wears black in the scenes he's in. There's a king, a bishop, and a knight that are dead around him in the card. And obviously a king, a bishop, and a knight are also chess pieces, and he's obsessed with chess. It's a scary sort of black knight on a horse on the card. And he says knight scary when he's talking to the nurse who died. And also someone mentioned this in Discord, I think, or possibly in the YouTube comments. And when there's certain scenes where you can see RIP graves behind him from the Halloween. So I believe that he's Death. We've done Tilly. Now the devil is the man in black. And you actually get the clues from Boyd and Boyd's scenes. So Boyd, when he's running away from the prison, he's got this torch. He douses the torch upside down. He turns it upside down and he sticks it in the soil. In the devil card, there's one of the torches is I think there's one torch and it's turned upside down. And also there's people chained up against the wall, just like Martin is in there as well. So I believe the devil card, the man in black, possessed Boyd in that scene, or one of his minions did.
And that was one of the key things I saw in your theory when I was reading through your Reddit was when you mentioned the torch flipping upside down. And that I saw that as being a key thing. When that was around the time when that episode was airing, when he first went to the dungeon, and when he lit it, he ended up coming out of the dungeon. And then when you were sort of breaking it down with the torch to connect to the card, I was like, wow, okay, that is a big connection there.
Well, thank you. I may be right, may be wrong. We'll see, but I'm glad it resonated with you. So we got the radio voice. I previously thought that Christopher lived in the lighthouse. That was wrong. So I don't know if he's the tower. I don't even know if he's alive. Maybe we haven't met the tower. But I do believe that whoever is at the tower card can control the weather because there's rain. Oh, someone's giving me a tip. I'll look that up later. Thank you very much. Okay, so we've got the moon. That's the boy in white. On the moon card, there are 2 dogs on the card, and the big moon in the background. So the boy in the white he represents the moon card. I believe that the witch's son, and we'll talk about the witch having a son later, is unknown. We haven't met them, and they're likely trapped somewhere. And you know what's really interesting is that at the start of the show, Ethan says, I feel like we need to rescue someone. He says that in like episode 2. So, and I think that's the witch's son that they need to rescue as part of this game.
Yeah, I have to go back for that part. But yeah, that's interesting.
Also, we got Judgment. I believe that's Megan's dad because he gets judged for his crimes. We got the World. That's Martin. This is important, actually. Martin, I don't know if you went back and looked at the scene that I talked about with you last time, Movie Guru, but I told you that he has a circle cut into his arm with like a little bit of a line down the middle. That's what the World card looks like. The dominant goes back and forth in time. Oh, interesting. Yeah, there is a scene where we see both the dogs at once. It's when Ethan and Victor are following the boy in white towards the faraway tree, and then the parents come, Tabitha and Jim, to try and stop them. And the dogs actually start barking at the parents because they want Ethan and Victor to follow the boy in white into the faraway tree. In my opinion, that's why the dogs have been sent by the boy in white to bark at the parents. But they fail in scaring the parents away, and Ethan goes back with them. So we've also got the World. So I've talked about that. And then we got the star. That's the witch, Twinkle Twinkle. Remember that Victor's mom talks about the stars, plays Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. I think that Victor's mom was either possessed by the witch or being looked after by the witch at this time. And she may have represented the star card at that time. We don't know. But we've got to remember, Donna talks about the yellow brick road. You know, she says, you know, is there a yellow brick road to get us out of there? Now, remember, the Wizard of Oz has a very prominent witch in it, the Wicked Witch of the West. She also pours a lot of drinks. And what is the witch? What is the star card known for? It's pouring liquid onto the earth. And we've got to also remember that Donna is the gardener. She's always seen in the greenhouse, and obviously she would be watering plants in there. So who knows? She's obviously been the longest there other than Victor. The photo with her sister has a corner mysteriously ripped. Maybe there's a date on there that she ripped away so people wouldn't see it. We got woodsy background in that photo as well. So it could have been taken in Fromland by a disposable camera. They did exist in the 1970s. And I believe that she's been kept the same age because she's been possessed by the witch all this time. And I don't necessarily know if the possession is one where she has no control. I think that the witch influences her very heavily. She may even know that she's possessed by the witch, but I don't think that the Donna is like the witch completely. Yeah. I think she's influenced by her.
So a couple of things here. So going back to we said the star, remember there was a sign in season 1 where the hotel sign said Star Magic, right? And so that was another clue. And then it disappeared, and everyone was trying to figure out, like, why did they remove that sign? What does that sign mean?
I think it was the flashback for Victor when we saw Star Magic Hotel. So obviously over the 44 years in between that scene and when Donna and when the Matthews family arrive, that sign would have fallen down and rusted away or something. I'm guessing.
And so and then what else? So also with Donna, right? I mean, yeah, there's a lot of her energy was just different, right? People noticed a shift with Donna, right? She was popping up a lot of places on cue. Now, this could be just writing, it could be the show, because this is a show. But there was a lot of stuff going on with Donna, and I did get a chance to interview Elizabeth Saunders. So you guys go to my page, you can see the interview with her.
I watched that one.
I asked her, I said, you know, what is going on with Donna? Because she seems off, and she kind of seems like Randall she just let Randall take her. Like, we know Donna to be this tough person, right? She's kicking ass, taking names, right? She's swinging at Randall with the axe. She's breaking up the floor. You know, she's confronting Boyd. You know, she's doing these things. But then when Randall comes at her, she just folds and gives, right? And so her response was that I could tell that she didn't want to say, right? And she said the character was written, and then she kind of said she didn't say what she was fully going through, just that she was going through something. But it seemed like, to me, she let him take her because she knew that either Boyd was going to come save her, or, like you said, if she is the witch, right, and she's in full transformation, she's already gotten some of her powers out. She's revealed herself to Elgin, right? She's, you know, come out sort of sense. She has power over the area around her. She knew nothing was going to happen to her, right? And then also the way she was tied to the tree. And I did make a comparison in one of my videos, the way she was tied, meaning upright, the rope around her and her hands tied, like kind of at her side, right, was the same that you would see in a witch burning or witch tied
Yeah.
up. Yeah, it was the exact same. I mentioned that to her, and she did not sound surprised. And if you watch the clip, she goes, "Oh," but she didn't look or sound surprised.
I mean, I'm not sure how much the actors are told about who they are and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I think they actually have to make up a lot of their own backstory for the acting, because
Mhm.
John Griffin, from what I've seen of the behind the scenes clips that they've released, that he's very, very
Yeah.
careful with the information he gives to people, because he really doesn't want anything leaking.
And Victor said that to me. Victor said, he explained a little bit how to get these scripts and stuff like that. And I'm just doing a whole bunch of plugs now. But on the interview I did with Scott McCord and Victor, you can check it on my page. He did say that they get it like maybe the day before. He said he does remember reading the script, and he was kind of like wondering, who is this guy? Like, who is Victor? Because I was
Yeah.
asking him, how do you prepare for a role like Victor? And he was kind of explaining it. And so, yeah, but you're right. They don't know that much about the character's backstory. They are filling in a lot of the gaps, but I think they're starting to put it together with the instruction that they're getting on set, right? And how particular, like you said, how Boyd is grabbing the bag, right?
Yeah, they must
That,
get clues. Here,
yes,
hold this pack of cards, Jade. They know
yeah,
something. Why are you giving me a pack of cards to hold, man? Why am I holding?
yeah,
That I think is, they do know stuff. They
yeah,
do know stuff. We'll see. We'll see. Like, I think, to be honest, if I was an interviewer and I was trying to get like information out of them, I would be like, what kind of instructions do you get? What kind of instructions do you get from the director in how to act and how to behave? And maybe they might let something slip, but that's just me, because I know Jack Bender. He is one of the three in the know, the three J's. We got John Griffin, Jack
John,
Bender,
yep,
and Jeff Pinkner. And Jack Bender's the like main director for the series. Anyway, sorry, I always end up talking too much. Sorry about that. Okay, so we got spider related dream catcher that she gives to Fatima. That's a bit of a hint. And we also got colony house. And remember, the plural of spiders is a colony of spiders. They could have called it colonial house. I think they called it colony house for two reasons. One is the spiders connection, and another is because this story is about colonialism. It is about the inception of colonialism. When John Cabot stepped foot on Newfoundland, that was the beginning of colonialism in North America, leaving aside the Vikings, if you count what they did setting up their little Vinland kingdom before they went extinct over there as well. And she may be the one who looked after him for 40 years. And I believe that she has taken his memories of this place. So I think when Donna led everyone, I think that Donna led people to escape in the 70s, that Victor's mom didn't make it as part of this escape. And before each one of them left, she took their memories away. And then Victor, who got left behind, when she goes and finds him, he's been left behind. She then takes his memories away later down the line so that he doesn't remember ever meeting her, I believe. No, I don't believe Martin was the man in black. I believe that Martin is the wild card from the town. I don't know how long he's been there, and that he's been trapped there by the witch. In fact, not even by the witch. I now believe that he's been trapped there because of bad luck, and I'll explain why in a bit. All right, let me keep going. Sorry, movie guru. I keep getting sidetracked. I apologize.
no, go ahead.
Okay, so we got Sarah, Queen of Diamonds. She holds this diamond mug when she's talking to Christy about whether she should do the bad thing or not, and she's talking about broken glass. And I see broken glass keep coming up, and that's actually a
broken glass. Yep.
I haven't been able to solve what the bottle stuff is, or the it may be a game of Skittles, maybe. Because they had bottles that they would throw things at, but that's the closest I can get to it, and there's really not enough clues to go with. But she holds this diamond mug, and there's broken glass, which is kind of like diamonds, that she talks about it, and she cleans it up in the cafeteria when Mrs. Liu drops it. So there we go. We got Queen of Spades, Marielle, in her rehab booklet, right?
Now wait. Well, as you go to this next part, so it says minor arcana there. Is this part of this is part of the tarot as well?
Yeah, so basically in tarot, you've got your normal cards, which are like the One of Cups, the Two of Cups, all the way up to there's the Knave, and then the Queen, and the king, and then it has all the other cards, which are like the hermit, the hierophant, all the other ones that I told you about. So these are the normal cards. Technically, it's say the Queen of Hearts would actually be the Queen of Cups, but I've changed it so that people can understand it.
Okay.
Just to make it simpler. So Queen of Spades, that's Marielle. There's a butterfly on her rehab booklet, and the rehab booklet is called like Lavender Palms, and yet the logo is a butterfly. So I think that's a bit of a clue. There's butterflies on the Queen of Spades. Queen of Clubs, I think that's Mrs. Liu. This took me a while to figure out. So when she is praying to the altar with her husband's photo on it, she has a queen chess piece in her hands. So I think this is suggesting that she is the queen of something. And then I remember that she's always got that wooden spoon that she hits Jade over the head with when he tries to skip the line for breakfast. And what does the Queen of Clubs hold? It's actually the Queen of Wands in tarot. I've changed it to clubs because that's what it became when it evolved. It's a wooden like wand type thing. We got Julie. She's the Queen of Hearts. She wears a heart sweater. I think
that was a big
7.
one. Yeah, that was a big one. Yep.
And I originally had her as the Empress because the Empress has a heart, like a heart symbol too. But I believe she's the Queen of Hearts because she also loves the sound of the ocean. And the Queen, she's sitting on a throne beside the sea on the tarot card. I don't know why this isn't in bold. So Trudy, you know that scene where she says, "I will ride you like an alabaster dragon" to Jade, which I thought was a great line. I was like, hang on, maybe there's like some sort of dragon creature, maybe like a white dragon. And then I found the the Knight of Clubs rides a horse. Sometimes it's portrayed as white, sometimes it's portrayed as brown. So I can't comment on the color, but it's a rider wearing salamanders on his shirt. And salamanders are a type of like lizard similar to a dragon. And there's a mythology around salamanders that they can breathe fire and they live in volcanoes, etc. Anyway, I'll keep going. Sorry. 2 of Clubs. So there's a Kenny. He's got that mini globe, right? And the mini globe is held by the 2 of Clubs. Christie's the 2 of Hearts. So it's kind of interesting that the 2 twos are together. It's sort of romantically intertwined. And that's because she has that healing symbol on her shoulder that EMTs have. She also has that heart stone, and she holds 2 cups, just like the 2 of Cups holds 2 cups. 2 of Diamonds, that's Megan Pratt. There's a diamond egg in the background in her room, and there's 2 Uno cards that say 2 by her dead body. So I think she's the 2 of Diamonds. Wow. Dale is the 3 of Diamonds because he's got this big triangle necklace. I've decided that the characters really don't connect with tarot, so I'm just going to get rid of that. 8 of Diamonds.
Work ethic. That was funny.
Yeah, I just thought that there was a similarity there, but then I realized that they don't really reference the like esoteric interpretation of like prophecy and
yeah, I got you. Yeah, it's interpreted. One quick question though, someone did in the chat, and I'm monitoring the chat and listening to you. So, someone asked, and I'll try to bring it back up. So Trudy is dead though. So even though she's dead, she could still have been a player.
Yeah, she was a card, and she's been taken. She got taken. She's
okay. So that's the game, right? That's the game. Don't hate the player, hate the game, pretty much.
Yeah. That's it. So last 2. So this is really interesting. So Randall. Do you remember in like episode 4, we see him pull that bench from the coach up onto the roof. Yep. Then he stretches his legs out and has the toolbox as the leg rest. And then you see him carving something out of wood on the back. Do you remember that, where he's got his knife? And then we never see what that wooden thing is.
Oh, you're right.
We never see what it is. And I don't even know if it's going to come up in season 3. Maybe it will. But for now, I'm like, okay, so why do they have this guy with his legs stretched out, sitting on a bench on the top of his roof, this bench of seats that he's taken up there? And then you look at the 8 of Diamonds, and it is a guy with his legs stretched out on a bench, carving something with a hammer, I think it is, or maybe it's a chisel. And it's
a small, like a Swiss Army knife.
Yeah, but in the tarot card, he's using a chisel, but I think you're right. In the From TV show, he's using a knife. But I think it's basically saying you're using a tool to craft something with your legs stretched out on a bench. So I believe that he's the 8 of Diamonds. I may be wrong. Finally, 6 of Cups. Kevin gives a bouquet of flowers to that monster lady. Poor Kevin, lonely incel Kevin.
Yeah, right. Symptom number 1.
And there's a tarot card called the 6 of Cups. where they give a bouquet. So anyway, those are all my connections to the normal tarot cards. And then I also believe that the visions that people are seeing are the reverse versions of their tarot cards. So in some versions of tarot, you flip the card the other way around and it reverses what the card represents in the game. So I believe that when somebody dies, they reverse and their body becomes possessed by some sort of version of a past person, basically.
And let me chime in there. I mean, I think the key word you said was possessed, right? And we've seen that, right? We saw the three get possessed, right? Where
Yep.
their bodies were in one place and their I guess their astral forms or spirits were in another place, right? We're
Yeah.
in this alternate space and they
Yep.
had the white eyes. So we know that there is some sort of possession going on
Yes.
in the show.
Yes, I believe so. I believe that the boy in white is actually a little boy that was possessed by the player who represents the boy in white in this game. So the boy in white is not in his original body. I believe that he is
Yeah, and
possessed.
Sarah confirmed that. Sarah said she don't think he's a little boy.
Yeah.
And but I think you're right. I think he's not what we see. That's not his form, right? That's just what
Yeah.
he appears to be. But
Yeah.
I still believe that whatever the boy in white is, he's multiple things. I think he's the dog. I think he was Martin, and I think he was also the embodiment Abby that they see.
Interesting. Well,
Mhm.
I guess we'll find out in season 3. So anyway, so we got the ballerina. So on the world card, there's a dancer in the middle doing a dance, and the ballerina is also a dancer. What's also interesting is that in 1866, there was a very famous, as the first ever American musical, probably the greatest ever American ballet. It's probably the only American written ballet of note, but maybe I'm wrong. And that ballet musical is about a deal with the devil. So I believe that she might be a ballet dancer from this play, The Black Crook, that started in 1866. I also believe you got that Civil War soldier that attacks Jade. I think that's his reverse tarot, who is also strength, and I think that's the Civil War Buffalo soldier. What's interesting as well is about black Civil War soldiers is that quite often they fought against Native American people and Native American tribes, and that may be why we're seeing a black Civil War soldier potentially. And then finally, we've got the Wheel of Fortune. That's Elgin. He sees a lady in a kimono. And I believe that that is a Shinto priestess from 1869, the first ever Japanese people to come to America were from this colony, the Wakamatsu colony. And she may well have been a Shinto priestess, and they were said to be able to see the future. So that's why the Wheel of Fortune is both the Shinto priestess and Elgin, who's a famous watchmaker, etc. So anyway, that's that. And I'm going to change this because it says princess.
Well, there was a couple of things. So yeah, the ballerina was it was a twist on the show, right? Because we didn't really understand the connection between the ballerina and boy, right? And why he
Yeah.
was seeing it, other than the music box had a small ballerina in there, but
Yeah.
no one else saw the ballerina. And so there was things that I was trying to connect, because I would say if it was fears, right? I said, wouldn't the person who was scared of whatever it show to that person? And I guess it kind of was in a little bit, meaning like if in some of the, if you go to the MGM page, you'll
Mhm.
see they made like little trailers about what the phobias were. So it had like a
Yeah.
one that said fear of drowning, aquaphobia, something like
Yeah.
that, fear of getting stabbed.
Vermophobia, fear
Yeah.
of worms.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we've seen certain people go through this, but I don't necessarily think those were their fears, right? I do think that Elgin had a fear of drowning, right? So he kind of drowned, but there was also some other things like if there was more of the spiders, right? They would have been more of that to the person that was afraid of them, right?
Essentially.
And even I sort of started putting together one of my last videos that I think some of the creatures also might have been fears, right? Because that kind of would explain more why they were such a diverse group, right? Like a milkman, a nurse, right? There was a bride and groom, and I'm trying to think, and a cowboy, right? So there is such a thing called someone who has a fear of a cowboy. It is a real fear. It's some sort of phobia. Same thing with fear of milk, gastrophobia or something like that. Fear of nurse,
Could be.
nomoscophobia, fear of I'm trying to think who else was there. Getting married, right? And some of these fears connect with some of the people, like
Yeah.
not Julie, Christy was pretty much engaged to Mari, right? But then we know that Kenny came into play. She might have had some fears of getting married, right? Or on both sides, right? Because we saw a
It's
bride and a groom. There's a lot of connections that could be made.
it's totally possible, and we've also
Mm.
got to remember that Sarah says that her brother Nathan was scared of the cicadas.
Yep,
Um,
yep. So that was a fear, and that was another interesting point because he was gone for a while. Why now was that fear coming through? And we did hear Jade when Jade was talking to Tabitha, and they were at the table, I believe in episode 9 or yeah, and he was kind of like, "Why am I seeing the visions of a story that was told to some kids before bed
yeah,
40 years ago?" Right? Like, why
yeah,
now? Why the delay? But I'm guessing that whatever the fears are, it collects them, right? Collects his energy because we did find out that it was hope, right? That
yeah,
the forest and the entity was feeding off of, and so it's keeping these things, and I guess it can, send
yeah.
them out as they will at its dispersal.
Sure. Although I believe that Abby is lying and telling the opposite. She's not telling the truth. Hope is actually what hurts the forest, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a bit.
Well, yeah,
But
trickery. That's right. There's a lot of trickery going on.
I think she's tricking him, and I can show you why in a bit. But anyway, look, let me run very quickly through the tarot card rules. Boyd says there's got to be rules, Donna. There's got to be something I can hold in my hands. That is a clue about having a hand of cards and it having rules. This game having rules, it being a game. So the game is a corrupted version of French tarot. Remember that Jade mentions his French grandma, and they were very popular in that era all across Europe.
Mhm.
Okay. I've talked about how the future is not ours to see, etc., etc. So in fact, I'm just going to delete this because I've already said it. So why 3 people? 3 cards are dealt at a time in tarot. So you do 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And also in the game of French tarot, at the start of a game, you put a card down, and that type of card becomes a power card as well. So let's say you're playing the game, you put down the first card, and it's a Ace of Hearts. Then from that time on, any card with a heart is unbeatable except for certain other cards, right? So it makes those cards special. So so when we look at the riddle, what can be touched, broken, and stolen? Well, you can say someone touched my heart, they broke my heart, they stole my heart. Those are the 3 things that people say about hearts. So it's talking about hearts here. Hearts is the answer to this riddle, and it's also the trump card. And you also got to remember there's a heart on the bell in the Colony house. There's a heart chair outside the Matthews house. And there's hearts on Tabitha's hospital gown when she comes out into the real world. So there's a lot of references to heart throughout the show. There's even some lampshades with hearts on them. So hearts are the trump card in this game, in my opinion.
Mhm.
What's also really interesting is that the cards, the people that have been highlighted as being important in this game, happen to be the special cards in the game. There are 3 very special cards in the game of French Tarot. One is the Fool, which is Boyd, and you can play that at any time to save yourself from losing your hand. And also, after you've played it, it comes back to your hand, so you can play it as many times as you like. It's a very powerful card. Then the other one is the Magician. In the game of Tarot, he's called the Little Man. And what is Ethan? He's a little man. He's a little man with a staff. And also, the most powerful card in the game that can only be beaten by the Fool, and only in the last round of the game, is the World card, which is the Ballerina. The Ballerina is the World card. So Boyd is the only one that can defeat the Ballerina because he's the Fool card, and only if it's played at the very end of the game, or at the very end of the round. Anyway, the round of cards.
And that's your part about the hearts in the 3 cards about being one of the 3 and why they was chosen. It was obvious that Boy was trying to save Julie the most, right? He was
Yeah.
really trying to get into to save her. And I understand her age came into play. She was the youngest one, and he even talked to Jade a little bit about how upset they were. And that episode started with him just staring at the floor, and he seemed really emotionally invested in getting her back. And he was the first one she was the first one he ran up to when he went into the dungeon, and he was really calling out her name over everybody else. I'm sure everybody felt the same way. He could have let Randall, stay where he was at. Right? Everybody kind of felt that, and Mari, Chrissy was happy to get her back as well. But yeah, definitely Julie was like, how did you put it up there? The trump. Yeah, Julie was definitely the
she's
trump.
one of the highest trumps. The only one that's higher is the King of Hearts. And then every of the major arcana, so the ones at the top there that I showed you earlier, all of those are trump cards as well. And remember, Sarah hears a voice saying, kill the boy. Why would she kill the boy? Because it's the third most powerful card in the game outside of the world, which is Martin. He's not around. And the fool, Boyd. Well, I don't think Sarah was going to be able to kill someone as strong as Boyd. So the devil tells her to go and kill the boy, Ethan, because he's the third most powerful card in this game. All right. So another really cool thing is that tricks, you basically, when you play the cards and you win the round, it's known as winning a trick. And what does the board game say when Mrs. Liu brings it in? Trick the warden, it says on it. So
that's what it says on the game?
Yes. And also what's really interesting is in the game of French Tarot, there are several moves that you can do. You can push, you can steal, and you can guard. And what is a warden? He is a guard. And the word trick actually is said quite a few times in the show. I've written one of them down as an example. Jade says the trick is you've got to find two pieces that connect. Well, that's putting the fool together with the world, which is the ballerina, so that the fool can defeat her. It's putting the right card on the right card. Another really interesting thing is that in French Tarot, you cannot communicate with your teammate. You can only do like really subtle signals to let them know what you want them to do. And you have to pre-agree them. And in this show, the witch doesn't know where her son is. Remember, Ethan says we have to rescue someone. And in the scene where Mr. Liu is hearing voices, remember, he looks around like he's hearing voices. And then he turns and then he shouts, I want to see my son. That is the witch screaming, saying, I want to see my son. And also remember, when the cicadas arrive, Donna complains of a headache. That is because, in my opinion, the witch is screaming at her saying, you got to do stuff. You got to stop this. I know what's about to happen. And Donna's getting a massive headache because she's getting too much from the witch, in my opinion. So those are just a few of the rules of Tarot, which seem to correspond with what's going on in the show.
Yeah. Now, there was a big scene where Julie, I guess became possessed, right? We didn't see any type of cicadas on her. We kind of just see her on the ground, right? Kind of swiping, assuming that that's what it was. But how did she, how did that happen when she was in the room with three other people, right? She was in there with Kenny's mom, Victor, and Ethan, and we heard her scream, but we didn't see it. And so you kind of named a couple of people there that are cards, right? That are players. And I feel like it could have been something either there that they let happen or did that kind of isolated Julie, right? Because we know she was a big player, and then because they were kind of like looking like what happened. And the other two that were possessed, they showed the bugs crawl in the window, crawl up to them. It gave the viewpoint. We didn't see that at all with Julie. So I kind of felt like something else was going on with Julie that may have been from the people in that room. I kind of been suspect about Kenny's mom a little bit too. I mean, with the food thing, with the diner, and then also, everything being in the back of the house of the diner, right? Jim's bracelet. And me and you were talking before about the yearbook, and that was a key that a lot of people I don't think saw or paid attention to. She specifically handed a yearbook to Jade, and Jade goes, "Oh, a yearbook," and he starts flipping through, and it had the name of what we thought was possibly the town where they were in. It just says West Canning. Yeah, it says West. I couldn't figure out the next, but you say West Canning.
Someone sent me like a super HD picture. They had like a 4K TV or something, and they were able to screenshot it somehow, and they figured out what it said, and they sent it to me, which is kind of cool.
So just a lot of things going on with Kenny's mom, especially even when her giving the clue about the electricity. And so she could be one of these people who are either a part of the third group or, not as she seems, or just, like you were in your reference to a card that is, playing on one of the sides.
Sure. Yeah. It's possible. It's entirely possible. All of these things that you're saying could be part of the show and what's going on. So anyway, look, just very quickly, the game requires 2 teams and 4 players. A reluctant explorer. I think the twin theory where the boy is split in 2 is still a possibility. I just think it's less likely than it just perhaps being Cabot or one of the Corte Reals. And they're reluctantly on the devil's team. And that's why the boy apologizes before he pushes Tabitha out of the window. I believe the witch's child is the sun card that's trapped somewhere. Ethan says they have to rescue someone. And then here are the eyes of the players. They're looking down on the game, right? This is what Victor's drawings show. There's an eye looking from above and it's crying because it's sad about what's going on. And then you've got this sort of creepy demon eye. That's the Man in Black's eye. So there are, and actually Ellis has a whole bunch of paintings of eyes in the forest, just an eye on its own looking out. So and it looks like he's just like doing like a doodle in the middle of a painting that he's done, but it's clearly there for a reason. So like I said, this is a metaphor for what's actually happening on the game table, and they're looking down, and these are the eyes that we're seeing. So that's them watching from above. This is just me showing, you know, there's the sun here, he's trapped. There's the moon here, he's free to roam. That's the boy in white. You got the witch player here and the Man in Black player here, you know, playing a game. The witch is in, you know, we've got this lady, she's in pink, which is one of the colors that the witch is represented by, pink to red. And he's wearing black, which is the color that the Man in Black is represented by. Now here, I remember we went over this last time, and I've actually made a few more connections that you might find interesting. So remember we discussed, we got the big wheel here and the two twin wheels here. So this could potentially be the twin boys. Actually, that makes me think it might be the twins more. I'm going to go back and change that. But anyway, got the mum here, the twin children here. This other circle is the Man in Black. And then you've got these hands, 4 hands, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you've got cards here, squares. So these represent the cards, and these represent the hands that are holding the cards. And the hands in the game of cards, you know, you say, I have got a hand of this, a hand of that, I've got a good hand, a bad hand. That is what this represents. And obviously, you've got the sea monster here, the jellyfish with his tendrils hanging down. So that is, I believe that this is showing us what's going on in the game. And then another really interesting thing is them picking people from the real world and turning them into cards. And here you see sort of like pincers picking up a crashed car and bringing it to Fromland. And here you see these vehicles arriving and the 78 of the 78 tarot cards. You can see clearly here that it's an 8 here and a 7 there. You know, so this is the cars, the people in the cars turning into tarot cards. And as we discussed earlier, the witch chooses people who are about to die. So Catri's about to commit suicide. Tilly's about to die of cancer. I think Fatima is one of the witch's picks, and it may be that she was also about to commit suicide, having found out that she couldn't have children or something like that. I believe that the actress has said that she was going through something very traumatic at the time that she arrives in Fromland, and that may be what it was. And then also the devil chooses people who are about to have a great life. So Jay's just sold his company. Bacter and Boyd are about to retire. And Donna, she recognizes what Jade is when he says, do you know who I am? She says, oh shit, you're one of those, because she recognizes that the Man in Black picks people who are, you need to be taken down a peg, have a really good life, you know? And I also believe that he chooses those who have escaped Fromland before or their descendants. So Abby recognizes Fromland from a dream she had as a child. And remember, Victor says dreams are memories for him, that he thought they were dreams, but it turns out that they were true. So I believe that Abby is the blonde girl in Eloise's pictures, and she is the correct age. I have checked this. She is the correct age to have been a little girl at the time of Victor, Eloise. And remember, we've got pictures of Victor, Eloise.
You said Abby?
I think it's Abby.
Okay.
And I think that's what brought Boyd and his people to the town. Bacter's grandma knows the nursery rhyme.
And that was a big connection for me. I was like, wow, what's the coincidence of that, right? Like, what would be the coincidence of that?
So sus. And it doesn't exist in the real world. And it's such a specific poem. I think that she must have been in Fromland before. Victor's mom talks about Civil War soldier stories. Well, maybe she heard them from her parents who were in Fromland, potentially. Tabitha's mom, I think she may be Eloise. Remember, when Tabitha sees the crayon thing, she says, I remember these, and she opens it. She opens it very easily. I believe that's because Eloise's, Tabitha's mom was Eloise, and she bought that for Victor, and maybe having a sort of half memory, subconscious memory of her past, she bought something similar for Tabitha. Now, Tabitha, the actress, is about 4 years older than she should be for her to be Eloise's daughter. Eloise would have had to have a daughter at 18, but let's remember she came back from Fromland alone without a mother, so she may have gone into foster care and had a very difficult life and had an early pregnancy, potentially.
Yeah.
And that may be that Tabitha became Eloise's daughter. And remember, Tabitha's mom is mentioned in one of the very first scenes on the show, where for some reason Jim decides to talk about how nervous he was to meet Tabitha's mom, and then it all turned out to be okay in the end. You know, we've got that connection. So I'm guessing here it's not that likely, but I'm putting it out there just in case.
No,
Jim's
I
dad.
like that. I like that a lot. There's a lot going on, or something going on with the grandparents, right? We know that, right? Even in the last episode, Ethan is sitting on the bed while Julie is still possessed, and he says, are we going to die? And if we do, are we going to see Grandpa, right? Or then are we going to
Exactly.
see Thomas, right? And this is a second mention of some sort of grandparents. In the first episode, like you said, they were where was the Matthews family going? On the way to visit the grandparents. Now, this could have been Tabitha's grandparents, right? And then the other mention could have been Jim's parents, right? But we know there's something going on with somebody's grandparent, and I like the connection you just made, where you just said that there could be descendants, it could be relatives, could be something going on. I think
And
that
remember
is a
that.
big clue.
Exactly, man. And Tilly even mentions, I have 7 grandkids, 4 kids, 7 grandkids. She's basically saying the choice that's available to the man in black is huge, because remember, people in 2 generations, 1 turns to 7. So, you know, he could be picking lots of different people who are descended from people. Yeah, exactly, Fitch09. That's why Victor and Tabitha are so close, because he is her uncle, in my opinion.
That could be, yeah. I could see a twist like that. I could definitely see a twist like that. Yeah, that's good. That's a good one.
So another thing is Jade's grandma is also mentioned in passing.
Oh,
And
that's right. Yeah.
I mean, think about shows that you've watched in the past.
He was really emotional about that, wasn't he? Right? Well, that was a scene when they were at Kenny's mom's house, and he was crying, or somebody was crying when they was listening to some sort of song, right?
Oh, I don't remember that one. I know that Jim cries when Ethan talks about their brother Thomas, who died. And I know that Jim gets upset when Ethan says, "Are we going to see Grandpa if we die?" So, but how many shows have you watched 2 seasons of where so many people's grandparents are mentioned casually for no reason?
Yeah,
I
like you
just
said,
can't think of any.
Chekhov's
Too
gun.
many.
Right? Yeah.
There's too many. So I'm suspicious. So I think that is sus. That is super duper sus. All right. So I'm so sorry. I've talked for 2 hours and I haven't even reached the new stuff. That was literally going over the old stuff that I've improved and adapted and like rearranged a few things.
I think it's been timely though. I think the way we've been discussing it, and I think how we've been connecting it to the current timeline. I think the people in the comments and the people watching are following. I think they're following.
Okay, well, all right. Well, if you don't mind me taking so long, I'll keep going. But I apologize anyway, Movie Guru. All right. So we got the board games, right? This game is also played on a game board. There are checkered shirts, checkered blankets, checkered curtains, checkered floors. They're everywhere. It's just obvious that they're making a hint that there is a game board at play. And this scene here is the biggest clue of the whole show, because the board games that are being played here are either the descendants of the board games that are at play here from the 1500s, or they are the actual games that are at play here. And I will show you how. So first of all, there are multiple games being played here simultaneously. There's like 5 different types of card on that board, and there's random game pieces from another game sitting beside it. They have mixed it all together. And that is what's happening in this show. Not only is a game of French tarot being played, but actually 3 or 4 other games are being played simultaneously. And that is what we are seeing on the show. That is some of the weird stuff that hasn't been explained yet. And what's really interesting as well is that the game board in the background, you can see it here, that is a game called Crokinole, which sounds a lot like Cromonocle. And Crokinole is a Canadian game played in a sort of bowl with a disc that you throw. And the Beothuk game pieces that they played with, we know that there were 7 of them. And we know that they were played with disc-shaped objects and a bowl that you would throw them in. So Crokinole is saying the Beothuk dice game is a part of this. Although they haven't, because the rules are unknown, it hasn't really made a big feature. So look at this. You got Uno. That originated from tarot card games. Obviously, card games. Tarot is one of the original card games. So Uno is a descendant of that.
Can you zoom in more?
That's about as far as I can go.
Okay.
I can make it black, though.
Okay.
Might be a bit easier. Hang on a second.
No, don't. Yeah, just.
There you go. Can you read it now?
Oh no, I was talking about the picture. Sorry, not the
Oh, sorry.
words. Yeah, the picture, just the picture.
All right, so let me point out. So that is an Uno card here, right there. There's snakes and ladders. It's actually the game of life, but it looks like snakes and ladders. So people are supposed to think it's snakes and ladders.
And my first glance at this when this scene aired in the episode, because this is 9. And it looked like, I was like, how funny would it be if they were playing a game of life, right? That would be extremely funny, right? That and a Ouija board. Honestly, I thought the Ouija board would be a applicable game for this.
Well, Ouija board I think is too recent to have included because it needs to be a game that existed in the 1500s. But that is an interesting thing that maybe they could play with later. Anyway, so this is the game of life actually. Here, it looks like Snakes and Ladders because the game of life was very similar to Snakes and Ladders. And you've also got Candyland, which again is another racing game similar to Snakes and Ladders. Game pieces here, all right? And these are the games.
Is it the game that you said was called The Warden? Was that the game that was called The Warden?
Yeah, that's the. I'm not sure actually. They sort of played around with the scene. They didn't keep it too consistent. So she walks in with the board game warden. Also, Princess Roxy of Roton is another game that she was holding on to, which I haven't quite figured out what it means. If you change Roton to Rodon, Princess to Empress, and Roxana means dawn or morning, then it would mean the Empress of the Morning Rose, which would be the Empress Fatima, who holds a rose potentially. But anyway, let me zoom in again. So also this game here, what do you know this game as? This is Ludo, and it is the origin of the game Pachisi. And let me tell you about these. The games that are being played here, the board games that are being played, are Indian origin. All right. So this was a gift that the Corte Reals would have received from fellow Portuguese explorers who had recently discovered India. Alternatively, they brought an Indian person along with them, thinking they were heading to India, and ended up in Newfoundland with an Indian person. But either way, the games that are being played here are Indian. And let me tell you how I found them, because I actually found these games without looking at this, because I actually couldn't tell what they were. I just couldn't tell. I don't have the board game experience. I posted in our board games, but they weren't too helpful. So one guy was, and then someone else posted much later, and then I found out that these games that I discovered were actually the games that were on the board or descendants of the game. So
okay, so let me just back up real quick. So you you posted this in I guess a group forum, and someone gave you the answer to what these games are.
No, someone else did after me.
Oh, okay.
And then they got the answers that I didn't get. And I actually only posted some of the game pieces because those I was the most curious about.
Yeah.
But in any case, I had already come up with these board games for my theory before someone confirmed that all of the board games that they were seeing are the descendants all the same as the board games that are being played here. So sorry, I know that sounds confusing. So let me just run through it. So these are Indian board games. What did I look for? I know that there are 4 colors in this game. So the board game must have 4 types of color in it. And there were actually very few board games in the 1500s that had like multicolored pieces that were uniform, where each team effectively, each player had a color scheme, right? And one of the only ones that there was that had a color scheme was this game called Pachisi. Now, let me tell you why I've made this connection, because I ignored it for ages. I've been trying to find the game board for ages, and I discounted every Indian board game because I didn't think that it could be India. But then I realized that India had been discovered a few years before the Corte Reals went missing. So this is how Indian board games arrived there. Okay. So these are the 4 team colors. In this game, they are yellow, blue, red, and black. These are the colors that we see people wearing all the time. And
in the show,
after Martin transfers the worms to Boyd, suddenly a lot more people are wearing black. So I think that is that connection there. Yeah, let's give the movie guru some more likes, guys. Thank you, the movie blog.
Yeah, let's run it up.
So the game means 25. the game Pachisi, the number 25 is what it means. And that is why there are 25 people on the bus, and Elgin says that it was 25 minutes since Ellis got stabbed. That's because the game Pachisi means 25
Oh,
in
okay.
the language. The board has a central
Wow.
home tower. There is a tower in the middle of the board game, and you need to send your pieces home. That's what the purpose of the game is, right? So that's why Tabitha goes home, because in Pachisi, the tower sends you home. There are also 12 safe squares where a pawn cannot be captured. There are 12 talismans in Fromland. The creators of the show have said the number of talismans is important, and there just so happen to be 12 squares, which are sometimes represented as castle game pieces or rocks that can be played as castles that protect people. No piece can be taken when they're within 1 square of a castle, and there are 12 of them in this game. So I believe that is where the talismans come from. They are the sort of castle game pieces that have been sort of adjusted, although sometimes they play with rocks, where they use rocks to represent the castles. So it's possible that it's the rocks from the game piece. But anyway, there are 12 of them, and they act the exact same way as talismans do.
Yeah. And so just, I guess we got a question here. So where do we get the information that there are 12 talismans? So in watching the behind the scenes clip, right, of when the show was still on Epix, right, we heard from the producers. He was either John Griffin or Jack Bender, and he explained that there are 12 talismans. They all mean something. The residents just don't know what they mean yet. I mean, that was early on. And if you go back to the scene where Boyd discovers the talismans and he falls in that little hut, there is the stone hut. He was, you could kind of see more of them. He kind of collected them, and that's why he had to carry them in a sack.
Yeah.
And that's why, I guess, but here's also a thing. I don't know. How many buildings are there in From? Is there 12 buildings as well?
I have not counted. I think that they have the shack as well. I don't think that there are 12 buildings. But the buildings do mean something, because you're going to be amazed at this. This next bit that I'm going to tell you about, the same way that you were amazed by the Matthews family and Boyd's Cove.
It looks like there's 12 right there if you scroll up a little bit, it looks like there's 12 in the main part of the town, right?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Wow. Interesting.
Because they all have a talisman. They all have a talisman, pretty much.
That could be it. That could be it. 12 houses, 12 safe squares, 12 talismans.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the other interesting thing. The number 7 comes up a lot. We got 4 and 7. We got 7 kids in white. We got 7 altars that they're lying on, right? The game uses 7 cowrie shell dice. So they are shells that they throw, and it's either up or down when it lands. And they're white. They're white. Cowrie shells are white. So I believe that they have a dice. And there is also a game in India called 7 Stones. This is where you get 7 stones. You put a little ball on top, and that's how the game is played. And then you take the ball and you throw it at the stones, and you have to knock them down. Just like the kids throwing that ball that knocks down those pieces, that game that Tabitha is playing. I think that they also, in Indian games, if they have multiple uses, which is what's going on here, sometimes game pieces have different purposes. So on this game, they're this, or in this game, they're that. So it's possible that they are both the dice of the Pachisi game, whilst also being the rocks from the 7 Stones game of India.
I like it.
So okay, so we got that. And did you notice this cross?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time looking at this picture. This was the first look they released. I even if you remember one of Victor's drawings, right? It kind of, in his room, he had kind of like I guess he was trying to draw the boy in white, and he kind of made it in his room. I even thought that this picture might be like the town might be the boy in white, right? Like the whole thing might be, if you kind of look at it, the head, could be the arms and possibly the legs. But I feel like there is something in this picture. They wouldn't have released it like that. So it could be a lot of things. I've seen the crosses. I did look at the crosses.
Do you know what shape a Pachisi board is?
This shape looks like that shape.
It's a cross, and it's not like a Christian cross. It's like right in the middle.
Yeah.
It's a perfect cross, and right here there is a cross, which I think is indicating that is how Pachisi is played, on a cross, with that central tower in the middle, the 12 protective zones, castles, whatever you want to call them, that are the talismans, and 7 dice, those are the kids. And I guess they decide what happens. All right, so here's what's really interesting. In the game of Pachisi, on the back of a game of Pachisi, they have the game of Goose on it. Now, I ignored this because when I was doing my board game research, because I thought it was such a silly name. Why would they use it for a TV show? Well, it turns out that they do, because the game of Goose is played on the reverse. So there is Fromland and the Upside Down World, okay? And that is because the board game can be played on both sides. It's like one of those, just like that Crokinole game that I was telling you about. It has games on both sides of the board. So you play one game, you get bored of it, you flip it around and you play another game. Well, in this game, they're playing both sides of the board simultaneously. So there's a shadow realm and there's the real realm. And that's what's going on. And I'll show you proof in a minute. Now, there are clues about eggs all over the place.
Yep.
So let me run into this. In the game of Goose, the squares are not squares, they're eggs. And you travel along, just like snakes and ladders, you travel along the path of the eggs until you get to the end, right? And there is an egg in Megan's room on the wall. It looks like an Easter egg and it's got diamonds on it. When Victor gives Tabitha the lunchbox,
yeah, I was going to say that. Yep.
It's got a big egg, could be a goose egg, in that top right-hand corner. And then there's so many breakfast scenes where you just got people carrying like complete boiled eggs around and eggs piled in the background, eggs in jars. You got eggs hidden all over the place. You don't notice it until you watch it again. But it could be explained away because it's usually in breakfast scenes. But
it's an Easter egg.
I mean, yeah, that's funny. Yeah, that could be it. Now this,
oh man,
this actually ended up becoming our modern Snakes and Ladders as well as the Game of Life. They're similar games. So here's what's interesting. You're going to like this. So it has several stops in the Game of Goose. These are the stops in the Game of Goose. There is a hotel, just like Star Magic Motel. Okay. And okay. I believe that the hotel, because there is no actual hotel there, the entire street is categorized as the hotel stop in the Game of Goose. There is a prison, like Martin's prison. There is a well, like Boyd's oubliette. There is a labyrinth, like Jade, who uses a thread, like the Minotaur maze, to walk around in the tunnels. Okay, those are the stops in the Game of Goose. And there's also a tomb or a death egg square, and there's also a bridge. So I believe in season 3 we may see a bridge, but it's also possible that we've already seen the bridge, and I'll explain about that a little more. And here's another interesting thing. Some Portuguese versions of the game, and remember the Corte Reals were Portuguese, have a tower in it and a sea monster.
Wow, okay.
It is a race to the end, just like Tilly is going to the races. And
okay.
do you remember where we see the wires that come to the exit sign, Jim's exit sign that he's fiddling with? You got these 2 wires. One leads to a sort of moon shape and one leads to a sort of sun shape. That is suggesting the racetrack that they're both on the reverse of the world that Fromland's in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that was a big topic of controversy about what Jim was doing and why he got out of bed to mess with that specifically. We knew it had to mean something, but it's like, what is he doing?
So I was also very confused. I was like, okay, so what? The moon and the sun need to reunite somehow because the wires join up just at the end before they get to the exit. But now I realize that it is a race between the players in the Shadow World and the players in Fromland to reach the tower first. That's how you score a point.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
And so it's a race to the end. And what else we got? Also, there are very few medieval games from the 1500s that had a spinning wheel, right? And in the Game of Life, and in this game of the Game of Goose, it was multicolored, just like this here, the multicolored spinning wheel. And just like, and remember as well, what's interesting about the Game of Goose is that it was shaped like a spiral. You had to get to the middle. And just like that, you got a spiral here.
So what's the picture you're showing us on the left? The picture on the go where you just were. That's the Game of Goose.
No, this is a spiral that that Victor has drawn.
Okay.
And this is a wheel. Looks like a spinning wheel that you can spin around.
Mhm.
And it looks like there's a little bit of an arrow here that you can barely
Mhm.
see. Um, around the faraway trees.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that is what this is representing. The spinning wheel in the game of Goose. And I'm going to show you what the spinning wheel is represented by in this world of From, and it's what we're going to see in season 3.
Okay.
What's
I've
also-
seen the picture on the right before. I haven't seen the picture on the left.
I will
Uh,
show you where this comes from, because in the behind the scenes video, you can see all of Victor's pictures in one HD photo. So you get a
Yeah,
lot
I
more
got it.
information.
Yeah, you sent it to me. I got it.
Yeah. So we can bring that up towards the end there. But so anyway, the other interesting thing about the game of Goose is that often the game pieces are represented by animals. And I think in this game, the game pieces are vermin. So the moon has the crows, the sun has the rats, the demon has the worms, and the witch has the spiders. So when you see the worms eating the inside of the crows in the caves, it's the two sides at war. It's two of the players fighting each other. It's to show you that they're enemies. And I
Mhm.
believe that the sun is on the other side. He's in the underworld at the moment, and that the witch can't get to him.
Mhm. All right.
So
So wait, before you go on, let's
yeah,
connect this a little bit, right? So, you're talking about the game of tarot, right? There's cards, right? There's
no, not
players.
Barrett.
Well,
Oh yeah,
just
okay, sorry, we're going all the way
yeah,
from
we're
the start.
going down, yeah. And so
Okay,
there's cards, there's players, right? And then there's
yeah,
different pieces, right? And then
yeah,
there's pieces of these games, right? So now we're kind of getting into the game section, right? And these games have not only the people in the town, residents of the colony house, now you're kind of getting into things
the
outside.
locations,
Yes. So
the
you're talking
locations.
about, so when you say the worms and the spiders, right? These are things that are parts of the games that are players that are also on a side, right? So it could be, like you said, the side of the men in black, the side of the witch, or and they're represented by the different colors, right? So that's sort of how you're connecting here with the colors. I just want to try to
Yeah,
bring
different.
everybody, together.
So Pachisi had different colored game pieces in different colored zones to represent the players. That's why we see these 4 very strong
Mhm.
colors throughout the show. And I was looking for games, medieval games that had these colors, and very few games used these bright colors because they were expensive. But this one did. So that's interesting. And then we got the game of Pachisi, which has these multiple colors, 12 safe zones like the talismans, and then on the reverse of it, on the underside of the so imagine this, right? This on the top has the game of Pachisi, right? You play that game, and then when you get bored, you flip it around, there's another game on top, right? And you play that game too. So in this, both games are being played at the same time in different areas. Okay, and the talismans were stolen from one zone and they were brought to the other zone. That's why there's talismans in this in the wrong game, as
Yeah.
it were.
And so
So
let me add something, because I saw something in one of the comments. And so I said this to you before, Alice in Borderland, right? I don't know if you've seen that,
yeah,
right?
I have seen it now.
And there's a lot of similarities to that because, I mean, for one, being in a different place than they were, right? They kind of were transported to a place, and then there was different games, right? Each section, each time they went to a different place in this Borderland, they all had to play different games, right? So
Yeah,
I just wanted to make that connection with what you're talking about because,
yeah,
right, there's a lot of games here, right?
yeah.
But then if you look at similarities from other shows and other things, they do play multiple games
Mhm.
during these things, and then bringing the whole, I don't want to spoil it, Alice in Borderland for anyone, but all the games come together in one, and it's like whoever
Oh,
won the most games, right, played one big game, right, and which was for kind of like the game of life, like you said, they were playing the game of life, or to escape and get out, and that's kind of how it is.
yeah. It's literally all the games being played at once with different game pieces. So the witches and the the worms and the crows and the cicadas. They're all the different game pieces that they're playing with, and then the people are the cards. So the monsters potentially are cards with a game piece on top. And that's why they're like monsters, right? Because they've been empowered by having a crow game piece put on them. But I don't know. It's just a guess. So then we also have the game of life. So the game of Goose and the game of life / Snakes and Ladders were so similar that sometimes they could be played on the same board. So when you're playing the game of life, you could have you could use one set of squares, and then when you play the game of Goose, you use another set of squares. So I believe that the game of life and the game of Goose are on one side, and then Pachisi is on the other side. So we're still going through the Game of Goose side now. So it also had a spiral. It also had various stops, just like I described, of the hotel, the prison, the well, all those ones. And it also has rainbow colors and the same multicolored compass, just like the Game of Goose. So again, there's similarities there. And what is the Game of Life about? Well, I believe that the faraway trees, they act as the snakes and the ladders. So when you go in, it's either a snake and you go somewhere, you go backwards where you don't want to go. That's why Sarah gets sent back to town. Boyd gets sent to prison when he goes into the tree. Okay. And it's just like going on Monopoly and getting on the go to prison bit. And that's why the boy in white sends him there, because he's already spun the wheel and he knows that whoever goes in there next is going to go to prison. So he sends Boyd through first, and then Boyd goes to prison, and Sarah, she goes back home. Now, what's also interesting about the Game of Life is that it represents a spiritual journey where good karma sends you forward, and so you get on an arrow. You've had good luck because you had good karma. You go forward, but if you've been bad, then bad karma sends you back. You get on a snake and you slide all the way back. So that's kind of like the story, like the people who are good, like maybe Tabitha, she's done so many good things that she's earned the right to go home. So when she goes into a faraway tree, it'll take you home, right? Potentially, I don't know. But that's what I think the faraway trees are. They're basically the snakes and the ladders of this game, where they can send you forward or backwards, just like that.
Yeah,
And
I can see the similarity from the way you explaining it. But I'm thinking, did Sarah really go in the faraway tree? I mean, I'm kind of based on what we see and what we don't see. We didn't see her, go into the faraway tree, and I kind of feel like there's a lot that she's been leading to that may not be the truth, right? Because we already assume that people here are not who they're supposed to be. We know something's going on with her,
it's
but
possible.
we haven't seen anybody go into the faraway tree and come up in the basement, because she said it brought me back here, right? But did it really? We haven't seen that yet. If anything, we've seen someone pop up in the base with that I call it the root locker, right? That underground cellar where Victor was. We've seen that happen. We've seen visions down there. We know this is a place of some sort of energy, but we haven't seen anybody pop up in the basement of the church. And then I do feel like you're right. Where people go with the faraway trees is very purposeful, right? Boyd went there. It was purposely, he was sent there, right? We can obviously say that. And then even going to the significance when Victor puts the rock in, there's no way that Victor could have put the rock in and the rock come up behind him, right? We've never seen anything like that. Like, there has to be some sort of control or manipulation of how it works.
We'll get a flashback, I'm sure, where someone like falls through with a rock or something.
And in the comments, someone just said Victor has maps of the trees. Yes, he does. I'm sure he has very, very technical knowledge of where these trees go. But I did notice on a rewatch, going back to when Boyd and Sarah saw the bottle tree, there was no, entry in it, right? It was just a plain tree. And
I think they walked around the other side to see it. So it's possible that they just didn't notice that it was a
skinny tree, and they might not have. And I know the set design, and it is a TV show, and they might not have even written that in or added that, or may add it later. But it was a skinny tree, like you could see pretty much the whole thing. It wasn't a thick trunk of a tree, and I don't know if that, I'm sure these things can magically appear. I do believe that the tree that Boyd went into in season 1, episode 10, I do believe the boy in white placed that there, but I do think there are faraway trees that are there that people know how to get to, like Victor. But I do think he can manipulate where these trees are and what trees go where. I do think something like that is going on.
Interesting. Very interesting. I'll have a think about that. So look, the Game of Life, you're probably thinking, well, I'm not seeing that many connections. Like, it also has a multicolored compass. It also has a spiral. So why do you need the Game of Life? Why not just keep it as the Game of Goose? Well, here's the other interesting thing. The Game of Life requires you to place an object of personal significance onto the board as your game piece. So a lot of people would use their rings or earrings or jewelry. That is how it was played. Now, remember my anchor theory that people are anchored there to objects of personal significance to them. And we've got these anchors here. Martin's tattoo. I believe there's an
Yeah, I
anchor.
remember the anchors. Yep.
So I believe that these objects of personal significance are important for the game. That's why the monsters have all that junk in the caves, because those are their objects of personal significance.
Yeah, that explains a lot. That explains a lot, because that was a big mystery about what is all this stuff doing down there? Why is it down there? I also thought another big thing about the creatures in the cave was that it looked like their eyes were white as well, right? And so to me, it looked like there was some sort of possession going on with them while they were down there. We know they sleep in their monster form during the day, but it looked like they had their eyes were white while they were down there.
Interesting. I think I noticed that. Yeah, interesting. Anyway, sorry, I'm taking too long. But anyway, so these are the anchors, and I believe that this represents these objects of personal significance. In fact, I think you can only leave if you have your object of significance. And I think it's possible that Tabitha, being Eloise's daughter, may have been given this lunchbox by Victor, and the lunchbox may be her object of personal significance, which allows her to go home. I mean, we really didn't need that scene where he gives her the lunchbox. Unless
was the crayon in there? Was the crayon in there? Because
no, that was in his pocket. I think that's his object.
Okay.
I think he's lost it, and she definitely gave the mom definitely gave that to him.
Mhm.
So anyway, let me swim past. So here is what's really interesting. So remember, I told you the board games are reversible; they can be played on either side. Well, look at these pictures from Victor's drawings that were in the behind the scenes stuff. This is the upside down version of Fromland, representing the reversible game boards of Pachisi and Game of Goose. Okay, in this world, it is in the past. So in the upside down, this is Fromland here, and this with its Ferris wheel, which we can see here, is the other town. There is another town. It may even be the town that Martin is from. We don't know. And I believe that this town simultaneously is having a game played there. I think it's possible that the sun child is there, is trapped in some way, and the witch is having to play on both sides with, her hands tied behind her back because her son's not playing. He's trapped somewhere. But can you see what I mean? Where there's a game board in the middle, it's two-sided. They're playing one game on one and one game on the other, and they've stolen the pieces from this one into this zone here so that they can use the talismans. And that's why it's different from Victor's era, because the witch hadn't thought to do that yet. And you can see this Ferris wheel here. It's very clear that in season 3, we're going to see this underworld town. And even in the background of your screensaver here, you can see the trees coming from upside down above. That is a hint to the fact.
As above, so below. Yeah, I mean, no, that's cool. I mean, 100%. I see that. But you said the picture on the right, that was from behind the scenes.
Yes, but I think that they were planning on showing it in season 2 and then decided not to. And then when they put all the pictures up on the board, it came up, and it's because we're going to see this in season 3. This is a bit of a spoiler, to be honest.
And that's what I was going to say. I believe there were a lot of drawings that we did only see behind the scenes, or like I said earlier, at the little the launch parties. If you go on their Instagram pages, you see a picture of the actress who plays Sarah, and she's standing by some drawings. I'm like, those weren't on the show, and they have more detail. They show more things. Like if you remember the picture of course, Victor with the looks like in there in the snow globe, or however you want to put it. You can see there is clearly underground tunnels, right? And the tunnels were kind of going to all the houses, but it seemed like you're right. They probably had more versions that they only released or will release later. So
yeah. And if you look here, you see that there is a taller house in the middle, almost like a tower. So I believe that the spiral imagery that we're seeing. Sorry, I'm on the wrong page. So you see this? That is a tower, in my opinion. And obviously in Fromland, they should have their own tower, but they're just not showing it here. So I believe that this spiral imagery that we're seeing here is sort of like, if you flip a tower upside down, it sort of becomes like a pit. So I think that there's a tower on either side of the game. So that is my theory of what the board games are in this game. It is tarot played on the game of Pachisi and the game of Goose, which is also the game of life. They've merged those two games together because the boards are so similar that I think, and because it's a very early Indian version of the game, they would have both of those games potentially on the same side of the board. So that's super interesting. They've got lots of hints at reversible games. They've got Crokinole. They've got oh god, I've forgotten it now. But there's another game that they have on the table. It looks like the number's 23, and it's a game that you play with cards and a game board as well. So again, another clue that this is a mix of games. Okay, so finally, or sort of finally, this is the game that involves the poem. Okay, this one people aren't necessarily going to like, but I think I'm correct on this. There is an Icelandic tradition, because remember, Cabot, he went to Iceland in 1496, 2 years before he went missing. So he is familiar with Iceland. We've also got to remember that there is a Viking, there's a Viking history to this place, and I think that they wanted to include it by putting in Icelandic games. And Icelandic games are very poorly recorded, and there's only a few that we really know of, and these are two of them. So the first is, there is an Icelandic tradition, and remember, Kenny loves Iceland. He wants to go to Iceland, and Cabot's been there. It's called Kvöldvaka, which I've probably butchered, which means evening watch. Evening watch, and it is where games are played. Poems, riddles, nursery rhymes. Remember, we got Frere Jacques and Twinkle 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 as nursery rhymes, and we've also got the poem being called a nursery, the riddle being called a nursery rhyme by back to his grandmother. And they tell stories. Remember, Victor says we tell our own stories. They also sang in a circle, just like the circle that Tilly is having her prayer circle. They also read scripture, just like Tilly is saying a Bible verse. We've also got them playing music, just like on a langspiel, which looks kind of like a violin. It's a stringed instrument, just like Victor's mom used to play and just like Jade plays. And the jukeboxes obviously play music. They also preserved food when they were doing this. So they would pack all their food into salts and stuff. And what does the Matthews family and Donna do in one of the episodes? They spend the whole time preserving food food with salt. The other thing is that it's a communal space where they share everything, just like Colony House shares everything. And Donna insists on sharing everything. And it all takes place under the light of a single ceremonial torch, just like Boyd has his single torch. And also they do this in the wintertime when the days are short and they don't want to waste too many candles. So they all get together, there's one torch, and they do this together. And it was like a tradition in Iceland. And part of this tradition is that they would play a game. So it was called, so I believe that there are 7 Beothuk children who are part of the ritual that summoned the Beothuk devil, right? And I believe that they are playing this game in the background, and sometimes the players have to get involved in it, okay? This is the game of Brúarleikur, okay? It's a cousin to the London Bridge is Falling Down game. Are you familiar with the London Bridge is Falling Down game?
As kids play it, yeah, like sort of like it's like a hand game. It's sort of that's how we played in the US. It's like the kids, and then they would go under each other's and like kind of run around.
Yes. So that's it. That's called a bridge game, and it actually has very ancient roots, and they've been playing it for a long time. It actually comes from the year. It comes from the Viking invasion of England in the year 1000 or so. So right around the time that Vinland existed. And here's what's interesting about bridge nursery rhyme games. Number 1, they are rooted in sun and moon worship. That's number 1. Number 2, They are rooted in burying alive children as a sacrifice, because they used to apparently, according to legend, they would bury living children alive in the foundation of bridges to make sure that they lasted forever. It also apparently was related to crossing a bridge to a dream world populated by the dead. So this may be the bridge from the Game of Goose, which is one of the only locations in the Game of Goose that hasn't been mentioned so far, a bridge, right? So it may be that this is the bridge game that they're playing. Players would dance in a circle holding hands. Again, just like Tilly is doing, where they all hold hands. And remember, the kids are holding hands as well when they stand next to each other. Remember those two creepy kids that staring at Tabitha? They were holding hands. They didn't need to be. And also, as part of this bridge game, you would get sent to a prison or a cauldron, depending on the version of the nursery rhyme. So again, after Tabitha, after Julie, after Marielle and Randall, they lose this bridge game. They get trapped when the music stops, and they all get taken to prison. So that's where I think it's coming from. So they get sent to prison or a cauldron. And remember, they also have cauldron drawings in the background of the show. There's two cauldrons in Victor's drawings in his room. And also...
I did see that. I did see that.
And in the bridge games, what do you have to do in a bridge game? You have to get out of the arms before the music stops. Just like what Martin says to Boyd, you have to get out before the music stops. Well, that's what the game is. All right. And this may be the bridge in the Game of Goose. And Nordic bridge games, they often featured oranges, just like the orange marker that went dry that gets dropped in the scene where Victor's mom leaves him and Eloise. The orange marker drops to the floor. Oranges are a big thing. Also, many of these bridge games mention thieves and staying awake. And they also ended with a tug of war. And sometimes they would use a thread to form the bridge. So the kids who had the bridge, they would hold a thread over everyone's head to make it bigger. And Jade has a thread in the maze, and Kenny talks about maybe we're just a single thread. It's hard to see the bigger picture when you're a single thread. Again, it's the bridge games they would play with threads. And also they were played on Christmas. And remember, Megan's Christmas gift is talked about by her dad. Oh, when I bought her that dollhouse for Christmas, she was so happy. And then also many of Victor's drawings have Christmas. You see the Christmas tree and the creepy kids looking through the windows. And another thing to mention is that the tradition of staying inside and doing all these games and things, Kovolvaka, was about staying awake. You had to stay awake during it. That was why they did it, was to stop them from falling asleep too early.
Wow.
Because the hours grew late. And what do they have to do when this poem is read? Everyone has to stay awake, because if you sleep, you might die. And I believe that people become vulnerable to the players on the other side of the board when they go to sleep. And that's why people have these weird dreams, because they're sort of halfway in the underworld that is the other side of the game where the Ferris wheel is. So that's the other part. Now, let's go.
Well, that's a good connection, because the nursery rhyme did kind of come out of nowhere, right? Everybody was trying to figure out, like, what did this mean? What was the basis? What it was connected to? I mean, that gives us some insight. And like we said, it is a good theory. And we're one of the fun things about this show is coming up with the different theories. And because none of us really know what's going on, and we're all looking for answers. And so one of the reasons why we wanted to have this live and wanted to get on here was to find some theories and was to try to get some answers. And this is it, you guys. I mean, everybody watch it, listen. I'm listening, because this is a first time explanation for me as well. And I'm looking to make my own connections and stuff like that from what you're saying. And I think that's one thing about the Fromily and the From community, is each person adding something and helping us all get to the answer, right? And so I know we said at the start, we may not be all the way right, but it may help us get to something that is right. And there is a long time before season 3, right? And I think this show can keep us coming up with theories until that happens, so we can keep interest in it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely be checking the forums for at least another 3 months to see if anyone else comes up with something interesting that might connect to my theory. So let me go through the last game, because that is not the only game, right? Remember that there are these weird liquids. We've got bile, we've got blood in the... did you notice the music box is filled with blood in the final scenes of the last episode?
When he smashed it, or before he smashed it?
Before he smashes it, the first time he sees it in the prison, if you look closely, there's red liquid in the bottom of the box, which is blood, in my opinion. Let me explain why I think that is. So remember, we've got these liquids and we've got these games, and I was searching around. I kept searching like various keywords like liquid game, water game. And then I realized that drinking games are a big thing in history, and in even today people play drinking games, right? And so let's look at the colors first of all, right? You got yellow, You've got gray, black. You know, they use different shades. You've got a reddish color here, and you've got blue here. Now here, when everyone's scared of Sarah, they're all wearing blue. Here, when they're all scared that they've run out of food, they're all wearing blue. When Ethan says to Mrs. Liu, "I'm scared," in the next episode, he's wearing a blue shirt over his t-shirt, another blue shirt. And then when Donna gives him a pep talk about being brave, the next episode, he's back to wearing yellow again, which I believe is the color of courage in this game. So you see these three dominant colors throughout most of it. And then when the man in black is freed by Boyd, you start seeing black everywhere. But for most of the show, you see these three primary colors. And only when someone is in pain do they seem to wear black. So they can be feeling multiple emotions at once. So people wear blue when afraid. The moon player collects fear. That's why his creatures, because I believe that they're his guys, the monsters that we're seeing are the boy in white's sort of cards with crow game pieces put on the top of them, I believe. So they walk away from Randall when he's not afraid, and I believe that these are gathered in the four humors. So remember, the monsters who walk away when someone's not afraid, when they cut him open, he has yellow bile inside him. So what does that mean? That means that the four humors, the emotions are collected into liquids in the body, right? So remember, Donna says, fear is something that lives inside us, just like hope or joy or love, okay? So we've got to, so that is a hint to say that the emotions that the players, the cards feel in this game are important. And I believe that the monsters collect it within themselves, and then they regurgitate it as crows or as monsters into the drink, the cup of the other player, basically. So when the witch gathers hope, she pours that hope into her opponent's cup, and when it's full, they have to drink the whole thing, and that makes them lose. And I believe that this is how it's organized. So this is the player, the star / the witch, the sun / her son, the moon / either an explorer or the evil side of her son or the twin of her son, I don't know. And then we got the devil, who's the man in black. These are their colors: red, yellow, blue, and black, which you can see here. Here are the game pieces they use. So spiders for Donna, the witch for Star. The sun team seem, by process of elimination, the fact that the rats are eating the crows, I'm going to put that as rats. We know that there's lots of crows in Fromland. There's lots of monsters in Fromland. So I'm assuming that the moon is the crows as well. And obviously the devil's the new player. So you've got to assume that the worms are the larval form of the cicadas and that his game pieces are cicadas, right? The characters that they represent are represented by Donna, who's possessed by the witch. Her son, we don't really know too much about him. We got the boy in white. That may be this guy's twin, his evil twin, who's now become good after so many years in Fromland. Who knows? He's producing the fear bile that we've seen here. And then we've got the man in black causing pain. Remember, we had in season 1, we had Boyd talking about how this place feeds on my pain. And then Sarah in season 2 goes on about how it seems to be feeding off people's pain. So and remember, the worms are known as blood worms. So I'm putting it as this: pain turns to blood, fear turns to yellow bile, courage turns to black bile. That's the third of the four humors, and hope turns to phlegm. So these are the liquids that go into the opponent's drink. And here is how we know what's going on. Remember, the witch's color is red. So this is not blood. This is the witch absorbing hope from Colony House. Remember how Donna talks about how there was so much hope and joy in Colony House before it was all slaughtered. Well, that is what this represents. This is hope being sucked up into the sky from Colony. So fear is something that lives inside us, just like hope or love or joy. Ghost Abby is lying to Boyd. Hope and courage are what hurts the man in black. This is why Donna is so upset after the Colony House massacre. It was her source of hope. The witch was winning up until that point. And then they had that slaughter, and she's all upset because she has no source of hope anymore. And that's why she keeps going on and on about how this tower, this radio tower, is going to give everyone hope, and then it's all going to be dashed, and no one's going to be hopeful anymore. That's because hope is her emotion that she gathers in this game. This is the end game for the players. The loser has to drink when the jar is full, when their drink is full. And these are the possessions. The witch is possessing Donna. The man in black, he possessed dead Katri, and I believe later dead Tom. Tom is sending Jade into danger, and I believe in season 3 we're gonna see why he tricked Jade into going into the labyrinth. Like, yes, he learned new things, but it certainly didn't help Julie, which is what his aim was. And the monsters aren't free either. No one here is free. That's because even the monsters are former people trapped here. Everyone is a card or a game piece. So these monsters, they've been possessed by the boy in white or reversed in some way. I'm still not quite sure of the mechanics of it. And they're kept alive until now, just like Martin has been, right? Just like the worms keep Martin alive, so too does whatever crow infection they have keep them alive. And I believe when, this is not confirmed, but the moon crows during the day, they go out and spy. That's how they know everyone's names.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. Somebody has to be spying somewhere, right? I mean, we've heard tons of voices and references and people calling out their names when there's no way they would have known that. Definitely the radio, like I was saying, that's one of the giveaways. Everybody wanted to kind of know who was the voice on the radio. I mean, we have to from what we saw in episodes 8, 9, and 10 that they control all the signals. When even though it was a vision, but the phone ring with Kenny, I mean, or just the radio in the RV, like these are all the signals that they control, and they have a way to manipulate and get messages through. So I believe it was a creature, that was talking to him, just like it was probably in the vision with Kenny. It was a creature, right? And they know their names, and under they can do it.
It's possible. I think that's how they know for sure. So anyway, we're at the end now. Finally, sorry that it's over 3 hours long, this video, but that's cool. So much like the cicadas, the man in black sleeps in a cycle, and the numbers 4 and 7 relate to the length. There's 47 on the radio, book 74 of the Bible, which is what Katri talks about. Tilly says 4 kids, 7 grandkids. Well, if you look at these dates, there is a 47-year gap between them. So between 1883 and 1931, there is a 47-year gap, and then 31 to 71, it's actually 33. So there's a little bit of fudging. This is technically 3 for that one, but I believe that these cycles last 7 years, so you can fall within a 7-year range. And then 1971 to 2018, 1971 is the date on the calendar in Colony House, and 2018 is the date that Donna supposedly came. So that would give us 47-year gap here, and then 47-year gap here if you count it to 1933, and then you've got a 47-year gap here between 1931 and 1883. So it's not perfect, but it may be that in between rounds of this game, he goes to sleep and the game pauses. And that is the time period that Victor grew up in safety, because the man in black had gone to sleep and the game was on pause, so he could hang out with the boy in white and they became friends. And then Donna takes all his memories away. And that's why Victor's confused about the boy in white's motives, because he knew him when the game was on pause because the man in black was sleeping. He'd won that round of the game. Now he goes to sleep for 47 years and then he comes back. Why the USA? Because all of this that I've been talking about, it all took place in Newfoundland, right? They're sucked into the game in Newfoundland. The explorers landed in Newfoundland. Well, I believe that, I don't know how sensitive this is, if it's insensitive or not. I'm not judging the creators on whether this is appropriate or not for them to do, but it is a theory that's possible, which is that the next date is 1609. Well, what was happening in 1609? Only one thing was really happening in North America in 1609, and that was the Jamestown colony, right? There was also some like beaver stuff going on, like beaver hunting in different parts of the country, but I believe that it's referencing Jamestown. And Jamestown was where there was the first Powhatan War. I'm probably mispronouncing that, where the settlers went to war with the natives. And I believe that the attention of the Beothuk gods then switched to America at that stage. And then from then on, any atrocities that affected Native American indigenous people, and some of these dates that we see on the walls line up with quite closely to when wars between colonialists and indigenous peoples happened. So potentially that's why it switched to the United States. but I don't know for sure. That's just a theory that I have. And then finally, why is the show called From? Well, this is my theory. I feel like the showrunners, they really do care about American history and the true story of North America. You see this tattered American flag in so many shots in the background. I think they care about America, but they don't like that people don't understand the history of North America. People celebrate Columbus even though he never set foot in North America nor sailed its shores. So he hardly should be celebrated, even if you discount all the sort of horrible atrocities that he did against the Taino and Arawak people on the islands that Cabot stopped at. I mean, he literally wiped out entire civilizations. He sanctioned rape, slave taking. Many of the Taino and Arawak starved themselves to death just to stay away from him. Like literally, they would rather starve in the woods than be anywhere near him and his people. That was how badly he treated them. And he celebrated. There's Columbus Day. So I believe that that they are trying to correct this Columbus myth. They're trying to tell the story of America from the moment that colonialization began, from the moment Cabot stepped off his ship onto Newfoundland shores. That was when colonialism really began in North America. And they want to tell that story through using historical characters like Civil War soldiers. They've got this Japanese kimono wearing lady who I believe was from this Wakamatsu colony. That's to show just how early Japanese people were in colonizing North America, really not that far off from when most of the European settlers came. The Civil War era was when a lot of people came from Europe into North America and colonized it again. And the Japanese were right alongside there with them. But obviously the country is treated like it was settled by white people. It was colonized by white people. But there are so many different people who have been here for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I think that they're trying to highlight that as well. There were black Civil War soldiers. There were black cowboys. There were female strippers in 19th century, sexually.
Let me say this. I mean, right. This part is I think what people have been searching for, right? Like, why is the show called From? And in a couple of interviews, I tried to ask some of the cast members, if they themselves had asked, the casting or the directors or the people that they were, to get the role, if they asked this question, if they asked John Griffin, if they asked Jack Bender that, and I guess it didn't cross anybody's mind to ask, or whether they know, or that was just the answer that they gave me. But I do believe that there is a reason why the show is called From. I mean, some people have been saying that it's just there because of where we're from, everybody from a different place. But, knowing how calculated the show is and knowing how much details, it's got to be something bigger than that, and you're right. I mean, me being in America, I mean, I feel like most of the shows they show us are American shows, right? I mean, there is a couple of times where there were some international shows, like, I found out The Office, was originally like a UK show, right? And then it came over here, but to some knowledge, it was mostly a US based show. But I can see how you coming from across the pond, as they say, right, is different. Like, why would they make this show such a US based show? But I would look at it as just MGM being a U.S. based company and John Griffin, Jack Bender. But even when they made Lost wasn't necessarily a U.S. based show, right? That was Hawaii being a state, but it was in Hawaii. So you're right. I'm just trying to put it together for the people who are in the comments and people are watching that. Yeah, there is reasons why they do these things and why it's particular, like why that certain area, why shoot in, in Canada, right? And like how you put it to Newfoundland and how I even was looking up, we saw Tabitha wake up in the hospital bed, she opened the curtain. Where was that place? Some people said Maine. I said pretty much Newfoundland as well, St. John, Newfoundland. And so there's a lot of connections to why they did this thing specifically. That could lead to more of the details. And that's really what we're getting down to. But that is so far. Scroll back up to where you had why it was called From. I think this is the most info that we've got on why the show could be called From, but and I think that if you connect it all together, it is a good connection because we have seen these random things that was out of place. And I'll sort of backtrack because you're right, it has been we have been doing this live for a while, but we did point out earlier some of the drawings in Ellis's room that were kind of just no connection at all to what was going on, right?
Yeah.
There's more pictures of that Ellis was drawing that was not just Fatima. And I remember I mentioned on the last live stream, if you look in Victor's room, there's a small silver statue, right, that he has on his nightstand, right? Totally out of place, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't go with anything else there. And it looks like what did I say? A soldier of some sort.
Yeah, medieval sort of soldier type character. Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe a conquistador. It could be a conquistador.
I think that's what the way I had put it. It
Yeah.
looked like something like that, like totally out of
Mhm.
place. It didn't look like a toy soldier, like a small green army man. It didn't look like that. It looked
Well,
different.
you know, we've seen the RV. We've
Mhm.
seen Civil War soldier toys on Victor's cabinet. So
Mhm.
it maybe we'll see a conquistador. Like maybe all the stuff that we see in Victor's room will be the historical flashbacks
Mhm.
that we're going to get, like the Civil War soldier,
Mhm.
maybe.
Yeah, I do think that well, the dates, and a lot of people are asking what were these dates, and yeah, you can look up all the different dates, and there will be historical events, and I'm sure that you can even go as deep as to say those could be connected as well some way, right? I mean, I think that it stretches on and on, but looking at the first dates, right? It's always the first, right? At the beginning, where did it start? And we're trying to
Yeah.
get to the origin, and we all know that any story, the origin has most of the details that carries on to the finale, right? And so that is where we're at with some of these theories, and talking about what's going on From, and why the show might be called From the Origin.
Sweet. And just for anyone, because we've gone on for 3 hours, this is a too long didn't read in emojis. That is that is what the game is. So it's a ships going to Canada. There's a witch with a devil. Then you've got the heart and the tarot, sort of, you know, seeing the future. You've got the seven cowrie shell, you know, seven stone game. You've got Pachisi, which means 25 in Asian. You've got the game of goose plus the karmic sort of rainbow game of life. And then you've got the Icelandic songs and dancing bridge game. So that's the
That's how you
overall.
sum it up, right? Just
That's
emojis.
how you sum it up. So I got some of my own symbology going on here. So that is the answer to the show. I hope when people reach the finale, even if they can't be bothered to sit through 3 hours of me talking nonstop, that they'll at least look at these emojis and be like, "Oh man, he was onto something." Yeah, as the ship it goes. If I'm right, obviously, and I'm gonna make some disclaimers now. Number one, I know I speak really confidently, like I know what's going on. That's just how I have to be when I'm theorizing. I have to have confidence in what I'm saying so that I can make further connections. But as I say at the end, I'm probably very wrong. But I feel like the tarot stuff in particular is kind of it just there's so many card references, there's so many connections to these different characters being having some sort of connections of a card. I feel like I can be confident on that. But you know, I know that people get annoyed at how confidently I talk about my theories, and this is me just saying, you know, I'm sorry to upset you. This is just how I am when I'm theorizing about a show. I also want to thank you, the Movie Guru, for giving me 3 hours of your time so that I can talk about From. You know, I really appreciate it. And you know, sorry if I talked over you. There's a bit of a lag between us sometimes, so it's hard for us to pick up when the other one's talking. So sorry about that as well. But you've been a great interviewer. I think we covered a lot of stuff. And yeah, I hope everyone tells all their friends, watch From. You know, this is a grassroots movement. We need people to support this show, talk about how great it is. And let's all give the Movie Guru, everyone who's still watching, let's
Run
give
those
them
likes up. Run those likes up.
and I would love to read your comments in the chat. I'll be reading over the comments in the chat later. I also will read your comments, you know, in the comment section. And finally, I'd love to just plug one of my books, if that's okay. The Movie Guru.
Sure, definitely.
Why don't you keep talking? I'm gonna go fetch one from my bookshelf.
Okay,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. So I got some great news, guys. I definitely think that this is definitely one for the books. You know, we put in a lot of information. We're looking for a lot of information on the show, and I want to announce to you guys here, everybody on the live, that From has been renewed for season 3. And so we'll be coming back in 2024. This is a fact. And so I hope everybody is happy. And I'm sure that with the attention and the popularity of live streams, we may see some things cross over, right? A lot of people have been saying that they like the theory so much, they hope the writers are listening, that the writers are watching, and I'm sure we might see some things pop up. But Taran, you do have some things that you have written, and this is one of your
Yes.
books, huh?
So I've written, I think, 10 books now. I'm best known for the Summoner series, which is like a mix between Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, and Pokemon. It's like a teen fiction series. But this series is called The Chosen, the Contender series, and the first one is called The Chosen. It has a From-like mystery where people get taken to a mysterious realm that they can't leave. They're forced to play a mysterious game. There's lots of historical clues in it about, there's all sorts of missing people from history that have showed up there. And there's time changes as well, and you don't know how that works. So if you liked From, you may enjoy The Chosen. I haven't plugged this book before, on my, when I do my theorizing, because that wasn't really about that. But I feel like if I'm going to do 3 hours talking about my theories, I might as well plug my book. So I hope you give it a chance and that you enjoy it. I also want to shout out to a book called The Call by Peter O'Loughlin. I know I mentioned it earlier. It's a very similar concept to From as well. The entire country of Iceland gets surrounded by, not Iceland, Ireland gets surrounded by a fog that no one can leave. And then teenagers get randomly teleported to the fairy world and get tortured to death if they get caught, and they have to run in the fairy world. And so, and they never know when it's going to happen. Could happen at any time. They disappear for exactly a certain amount of time, and they have to survive. And like you said, if they eat the food there, they get trapped there forever.
Okay.
And like you could literally disappear while on a bus, and when you come back, you'd be floating in midair. So it's like super dangerous. And the kids, instead of going to school, they do go to school, but they're also learning how to survive in the fairy world, and they like train and exercise and they sprint and all sorts of things. So anyway, it's a good book as well. So I recommend that one too.
All right, no, so this definitely been great. This definitely has a lot of rewatchability. A lot of people rewatch the first one, watch the first one, so I'm sure the same thing. And I rewatched the lives again too, and was like, wow, just going back through some of the theories. I definitely like the elements. It adds a lot of explanation, but there's still a lot more that we got to figure out. Right, there are still a lot of things that were there that might not have connected, but I think this is a good start.
Yeah, the
I think.
broken glass, man. I still can't figure that out. I thought maybe it was a Chinese puzzle game that's sometimes made out of glass that looks like it's like a precursor to the jigsaw puzzle. But that's such a loose connection that I couldn't find anything. So I would love to know what the broken glass means if anyone has any ideas.
I mean, and I'm just thinking quickly. There's been a couple other theories, about the logo for the hospital, St. Anthony's Hospital, with the symbol.
But no one commented on the moon that was on there twice. There's like a moon symbol that they've not only brought up as like a sort of like right click and then more info box on it, but they also have it as an icon on the desktop. But everyone's focused on the root symbol. So I just thought I'd point that out to anyone who hadn't noticed.
Yeah, but tons and tons of things. I'm sure as everyone rewatches, we'll find more. And look, we'll definitely let everybody know where you are. You plugged your book. Let them know what your social media is and where they can find it. I put it in the comments, but just go ahead and say it again.
Sure. If you search my name, Taran Matharu on Instagram, I'll be on there. I'm also on Twitter, Taran Matharu1. That's mainly where I hang out, where you can contact me. I'm also on the Discord channel. I want to give a shout out to the Discord from Epic's channel. I've forgotten exactly what it's called, but it's a great place to hang out and chat. People get I've got a few good ideas from there. People are really helpful. So yeah, I plug that as well, and also plug to the Movie Guru. Give him a like. If you're watching this because you just wanted to tune in and hear my theory, he's got some really good ideas. I learn a lot when I watch his show, so please give the Movie Guru a subscribe as well. He's just started to build his channel. I think it's going really well, and we've got to keep the momentum going.
Oh, definitely. So we can do more live streams like this, man. And so I'm really excited. Yeah, it's been a great journey. I've had this channel since 2015. I always liked movies and always wanted to talk more about them. And it really wasn't until the show, until we talked about the last time, that the show. It's two ways to watch the show, right? It's to watch the show or to solve the show, right? And me and you kind of picked up on the clues and really wanted to solve the show. And so that's really what brought it up and really got my page going. So thank you guys for getting it going, for the watches, the likes, and the subscriptions. And while you were getting your book, did you hear what the announcement I made?
That is amazing. I'm so happy. I mean, I feel like the show is doing so well,
Mhm.
and with the writer's strike, every TV show is in the same boat. So like, I didn't think it was going to affect it too much because they got to treat all the TV shows that they're making equally.
Mhm.
So I didn't think From had a particular disadvantage. But I'm so glad to hear that it's official. I know that Boyd, Harold Perrineau, was sort of leaking some hints that it was coming.
Mhm. Yeah.
But so did you just break that story, The Movie Guru? Was that
Yeah,
you?
yeah, I think I did. I think I did.
Nice.
But it definitely, we could tell that that was going to happen, right? We
It's
definitely
just
could
doing
tell
too well. It's
that
too
it
good
was
a
gonna
show.
happen. Yeah, I mean, just the press everywhere, and like I said, it started on Epix, season 1, not a lot of people, and I just started doing the reviews on it because I liked it, right? Like,
Yeah,
it wasn't, I didn't know anything about it other than what I saw in the first episode, felt it was a strong first episode, but saw the potential, and like you said, saw the things that I felt like needed to be discussed, took it upon myself to start discussing them, and then we here today. So look, this has been great. We did 3+ hours. It's been amazing hearing the theories, hearing your
we
stories,
didn't
and
miss any
connecting some
super
dots.
chats, did we?
We did. I had a couple here
I don't
uh,
mind going through
early.
them.
There
Uh,
was Larry Kawartsky. I might have mispronounced his name, but he said, let me see if I can show. He said, yo, Guru and Taran, do you guys do any theories for any other shows like Twin Peaks or the OA? If yes, I'd like to hear them. We got another one saying, "Thank you for having Taryn back on. The season finale was disappointing. I was sorry to hear that. The season finale was much better. What do you guys think? Will season 3 give us more?" And on that, I do want to say though, I do think there's going to be this whole duality going from wherever we find out Tabitha is to pretty much solving it from the outside, finding people that did escape, or finding people, like could be Victor's sister, it could be Victor's mom, it could be other people, like you were saying, family members or whoever,
yeah,
or like you said, she could find out that her parents were in on this and knew
yeah,
about this, right? Like
yeah.
that, I think that's
That's
an
what I think is
amazing
going to be
twist. That's
her.
amazing. And then,
Mm.
and on the flip side, them in Fromville trying to figure out what happened to Tabitha, right? And then also trying to escape with whatever they throw at them. So I think that's going to be a big one. Some
Let me
other,
answer those questions though, just quickly. I don't do any other theories, by the way. I do love Severance though. I just don't think they hide clues in the same way that From does. So it's sort of pointless for me to make theories because they really don't give you much to work with. But I love that show. And then what was the other question? Sorry, I've forgotten the last one. It was something like, do I have any? Oh, what did I think of the season finale? I like the reveal of Tabitha, but I was hoping we'd get another wall full of clues to look at.
Mm,
However, the behind the scenes have now just released all these unseen photos from Victor. So for me,
yeah.
that's just as good. A complete surprise to me that they released that because it's got so many really good clues. Like now we know that this spell is occurring underground. They've got this big sort of black ball. I don't know if you want to throw it up, Movie Guru.
Yeah, I was trying to bring it up, but it looked like I wasn't able to bring it up because it's a PNG. I might need a JPEG
Oh, really?
for the
Okay.
way, yeah, for the way my streaming thing is set up. But
Okay.
I just watched Hypnotic the other day with I can't remember who it was, but it's a Hypnotic. It's a thriller, right? Alice Bragg and who's J Lo's husband? I know his name. J Lo's married to Ben Affleck. Yeah. So it's a mystery show. It's kind of a thriller. It has a twist, a big twist actually. And I've been hearing a lot of comparisons to it from just as far as like trying to determine what's going on. And I thought it was good. I didn't think it was that great, but I did think it was good. And I think it's definitely worth a watch if you're looking for something. But other than that, a lot of the shows that I do, I got some other work coming up. I've been getting a lot of interviews. Like I did interview the whole cast, and I'm waiting. And maybe because it is live, we'll hear. I'm waiting to get my interview with Harold Perrineau. So I would love to talk to him about From. I mean, I think that would honestly be my season finale if I got a chance to interview him. I interviewed Smiley,
He's the GOAT.
yeah,
He is
Jamie
the GOAT.
McGuire. And the great thing about that interview was really said he started as an extra. I'm guessing he's from Canada. He went on set and he brought his A game and really carried over to now. I believe he, is getting represented by the PR people and is getting, like you say, he's probably gonna get more roles, of course, and
I hope
possibly
so.
to come back. I mean, I can see them writing it in some way because of his popularity.
he just seems like such a nice, sweet, genuine person. That's the impression I've gotten from every interview he's done. I sent him a nice message on Instagram just to tell him how much I appreciated his work that he was doing. He was very, gracious back. So, yeah, it's I very much hope that you interview Harold. Oh, thank you very much, Matt Feather. That's very, very kind of you. So is there any more super chats we got to get through?
No, that was it. Yeah.
All right, sweet. Well, I'm going to say goodnight because it's 2:20 a.m. in the morning for me. But once again, I want to thank everyone who watched, because I like, to be honest, the reason I do that is because I like reading the comments and seeing what people thought of the theory more than anything. I also like supporting small creators, like the Movie Guru. He's the first guy who reached out to me and offered for me to do interviews. And I have done interviews with others, and I will probably do much shorter go-throughs of my theory with other people. But this is really the one that I've spent 3.5 hours on, because I really wanted to go through it, because I think the last video did so well. I think it's got like 35,000 views now or something like that.
Yeah, and a lot of positive reviews. People saying it really helped them keep interest in the show. They said that it was getting to that point of season 2 where it was kind of just a people drama, and they wanted to get more into the theories, and us talking at that particular time really helped pique their interest in, kind of watch the show how we watch it, for answers instead of just watching it as a show. And so I think it was great. We got a lot of good response on that. And
you watch it twice. I just wanted to ask, because you're a fellow theorist. Do you, because I watch it once, without trying to look for any clues at all, just to enjoy it. And then I literally go right back to the start and start skipping through the frames, looking for background shots, and then reading the subtitles to see if I can see any clues in the subtitle. When they have an inane conversation that doesn't mean anything for the show, when they're talking about pancakes or jelly or whatever, you're like, okay, this is a clue, because why would they put in this random bit that means absolutely nothing? If they have, if any character goes off on some random tangent about owls or jelly or anything, I'm like, what does this mean? What are they saying? But if you're watching the show, you can't pause it and think. You got to try and enjoy it as well. That's my advice to anyone who's watching it. Do you do that?
I'm locked in. I pretty much, when I was making videos for the week ahead or for the week coming, or I'm pretty much watching all day, right? Like that's the only thing I watch. It's the only thing on my TV. And so I'm watching it and watching it again. And you're right. There's some parts that I watch, some parts I slow down and just take notes, but the first watch, it's pretty much just a regular watch, take notes, and then watch it again, and try to find as much things as I can. But I also, trying to make the videos, I have to screenshot stuff, I have to record stuff, and so I'll, have a script of what I'm watching from my original watch, and then I'll expand on that, and then I'll have to, get those clips and connect it with the video. And it takes about 3 days, to do it, but hopefully I'll get it down to a day and a half so I get more videos out faster. But I was doing some deep dives on some of the theories. Like I did fear, right? I did the dogs, I did the talismans, and just connecting all the dots, like kind of how you were saying. It takes a while to find the sources, the resources, but it is like doing this type of format when you have it on live and you can just scroll down is much, much better. And I believe it works than doing the video, because I'm saying it's a lot of getting clips, editing, downloading, storage.
Oh yeah.
Man.
Let me tell you, people keep saying to me, you got to make your own YouTube channel. You got to do your own videos. I'm like, I don't have time for that. I work 3 jobs, man. I got 3 different jobs. They take up all my time. Like this, to be honest, this from theory that I've written, that is literally all of my free time and nothing else. Like even my girlfriend's like, I cannot wait for From to be over, because you have no time for me at all. So I don't have time for a YouTube channel. I'm much happier like promoting channels like yours, the Movie Guru, because
appreciate it.
You guys put in the time. You deserve the credit, and you gave me the opportunity to talk about it, so I appreciate it, man.
All right, well, I appreciate
I will sign on. You keep pulling me back in because I like talking to you.
I got you. Well, I appreciate you for joining, coming. Like you said, appreciate you for doing the live. Appreciate you for spending the 3.5 hours. It's been great as always, and I'm sure we'll be in touch. But listen, to everybody out there, thank you guys for the comments. Thank you guys for the watch, and we'll see you guys on the next live.
Bye.